Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight, we're driving deep into the Texas backroads, where headlights flicker, radios cut out, and strange figures stand silently by the road waiting. These aren't stories passed down around campfires. These are true accounts from real people who saw something out there. On the asphalt, something that should not exist. From a man who appears twice without you ever turning around, to shadowy figures that vanish the moment you blink. Each one of these roadside encounters will crawl under your skin and sit with you long after the engine shuts off. But before we roll into the dark, here's something most viewers get wrong. They leave without subscribing. And by doing so, they miss the twisted tailies that come out every week. Stories that only the brave can handle. Stories that won't let you sleep. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because tonight's drive through Texas is just beginning. And what's waiting at the next mile marker might not want to be seen, so tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Type it below, because out here, time slips, the road bends, and the horror never stops. Let's begin. It started on a Wednesday night, the kind of night in San Antonio when the heat doesn't let up even after sunset. The sky was that sickly orange glow from the city lights bleeding into the clouds, and the air smelled faintly of rubber and gas. Like every highway around here. I just finished a late shift at the refinery on the south side, and I was taking Loop 1604 like I always did, heading back north to my place out past Stone Oak. There's something about those long stretches of empty road at night that makes your brain slow down, like the world's paused between stations. The music on the radio was fuzzy, my coffee had gone cold, and my eyes were beginning to sting from the hours. That's probably why I didn't notice him at first. Just a shape, a figure, standing motionless in the median as I passed. I blinked, and he was gone in my mirrors. At the time, I thought it was some stranded driver or maybe a cop clocking speeders. The way he stood there, perfectly straight with his arms at his sides, gave me a strange feeling, like when you see someone staring and you don't know if they're looking through you or at something behind you. Didn't think much of it. Not. Until the next night. Thursday, I left work late again, past midnight. I was halfway through the loop when I saw him again. Same spot, same posture. The same unsettling stillness, like a mannequin someone had forgotten to take down. I passed him, glanced in the rear view, and nothing. No movement, no walking away. Just gone. This time my stomach twisted a little, and I turned off the radio. The silence in the car pressed in like something watching. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Just some poor guy waiting for a tow or a ride. But 2 nights in a row? The exact same posture? The third night, I slowed down as I approached. There was no shoulder on that part of the road, just the thin strip of grass separating the 2 directions. As I got closer, my headlights fell on him, and I stopped breathing. He was tall. That was the first thing. Too tall. His clothes were dark, maybe a hoodie or a jacket, couldn't tell. His head was tilted just slightly down, and his face was in shadow. He didn't move, didn't acknowledge the car. But my hands tightened on the wheel without me realizing it, and then I passed him. And 30 seconds later, I passed him again. That's when I slammed on the brakes so hard the tires screeched. There was no turn, no loop, no exit in between. I didn't turn around, but I passed him again. I checked the clock. 30 seconds had passed, exactly, like a loop. A real loop, not the kind the city named the highway after. My palms were sweating. I looked behind me. Road was empty. Nothing but taillights fading from a semi that must have been half a mile back. The car idled. I waited, nothing, so I kept driving. Slowly. And sure enough, there he was again. Same spot, same posture. That's when I heard it. just the faintest sound from the back seat. Like someone breathing through their nose, slow and steady. I didn't dare look. I didn't check. The mirror. My mind screamed at me not to. I focused on the road, on the stripes, the lights, the hum of the engine. I don't remember getting home that night. I just remember locking every door, shutting every blind, and leaving all the lights on. The next day, I called in sick. I had. To know if I was going crazy. I posted about it on a local San Antonio message board, asked if anyone else had seen him. Within the hour, I had 15 replies. One guy said he saw the man every Friday after leaving his janitor job at Heb. Another said she saw him during a lightning storm, and when the lightning flashed, his shadow pointed the opposite direction of the light. Someone else said they tried to stop and help, but the man turned and looked directly at them. They crashed 2 miles later, said they never saw the impact. Just woke up with blood on the windshield and their own voice screaming in their ears, but the worst comment was the shortest. He follows you home if you pass him more than once. That night I didn't sleep, not because I was scared of him showing up at the door or tapping on the window, but because I heard him, the soft shuffle of footsteps pacing my hallway, the creak of the floorboards in front of my bedroom, the sound of someone just standing on the other side of the door. I left the light on all night and didn't dare open it. In the morning, there was dirt on the carpet. I moved a week later. Found a place closer to downtown, stopped using Loop 1604 altogether. But even now, even after months, I still avoid dark medians, and I always keep my eyes straight ahead. I don't look in the mirror after midnight. I don't pass the same place twice if I can help it, and every once in a while, I swear I feel the car get colder even on a hot Texas night. Like someone's back there again, sitting quietly, hands by his sides, just waiting for me to notice. Just south of Blanco, Texas, where Highway 281 runs dead quiet in the early hours, the mist doesn't rise, it settles, heavy like a blanket, thick enough to erase taillights and headlights, and silence everything except your own breathing. That stretch between Johnson City and Spring Branch has always felt different, like something's holding its breath out there, waiting. It was on one of those mornings, just before the sun cracked the hills, that Tom Sanders saw her. Or thought. He did. Tom was an early riser. Drove deliveries from San Antonio up to Marble Falls and back down again. Never liked taking the interstate. Said too many people drove like their time was more important than their lives. He preferred the slow, winding roll of the 2-lane highways. The kind with deer carcasses on the shoulder and old roadside shrines marked by faded plastic flowers and sun-bleached crosses. The kind of road where if you broke down, no one would know for hours. Maybe all day. It was 4:52 a.m. when he passed the Blanco River Bridge, sipping coffee from a metal thermos and humming along to some country station that kept cutting out. The dashboard clock glowed faint green. The moon had gone down, but dawn hadn't started yet, and everything was in that in-between dark that makes you question the shape of trees. Then he saw her. At first, she was just a pale shimmer ahead on the road, like a bag caught in a breeze. Tom slowed down. His headlights picked her out from the fog like a spotlight on a stage. She wasn't waving, wasn't walking. She was gliding. Slowly, her long dress shifting as if underwater. Pale, old-fashioned. He saw her hair too long, dark, tangled like riverweed. Her arms were stiff by her sides. Her head tilted ever so slightly. He didn't see any feet. She crossed in front of him and vanished into the other side of the fog. Tom's heart thudded once hard, and he hit the brakes without thinking. The truck fishtailed slightly. He stared. Ahead, eyes straining. Nothing. He looked in the rearview mirror. Just mist. No taillights behind, No movement. Then he heard it. Soft at first, but growing louder. The unmistakable sound of chains dragging along pavement. A long scraping metallic groan. Then a pause. Then again, louder, closer, metal grating. On asphalt. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. Tom reached over and locked the doors. Something primal in him did it, like muscle memory from a place deeper than logic. He rolled up the windows, though the air was thick and muggy. Then, he did the one thing he always told his daughter never to do. He turned off the radio. It didn't help. The scraping grew louder. Then something touched the back of the truck. Just a light tap, like a finger dragging across the door. He twisted in his seat but saw nothing. Still, he didn't move. Not for several minutes. Not until the scraping stopped and the mist seemed to pull back a little. By the time he reached Johnson City, he was pale, sweating, and didn't even remember the last 15 miles. He called his wife when he stopped to gas up and didn't say a word about what he saw. Just said he loved her, but he did mention it later, once, to a man named Jorge, a mechanic in Spring Branch who'd grown up in the area. Jorge had been quiet for a moment and then said, "You saw the chain woman." That's what the locals called her. The chain woman. No name, no story. Not a clear one, anyway. Some said she was a prisoner who escaped a work detail back in the early 1900s and was run down by a wagon on that same stretch. Others said she was a mother chained to a bed by a jealous husband and burned alive when the house caught fire. Most didn't say much at all, just a warning. Don't stop on 281 between 4 and 5 in the morning, not for anyone. Not even a woman in a white dress dragging chains. Especially not her. Tom didn't stop again. He started taking a different route. Added 20 minutes to his deliveries but didn't care. Some mornings though, when the mist rolled low and thick, he said he could still hear it. The sound of chains behind him, just barely, just enough to ruin his coffee and raise his blood pressure. He never admitted it outright, but his wife caught him one night searching for old news clippings, historical records, anything. There wasn't much to find. Just one mention in a local blog about a driver who'd swerved to miss a woman on the road and ended up wrapped around a pole. The dashcam footage showed no woman, just the sound. A screech, and the scraping of metal. Then came the story of the couple. Their names weren't published, but it was on the sheriff's blotter. 2 kids from Austin heading down to Corpus for a weekend trip. They left around 4 a.m., made good time until they hit Blanco. The woman called her sister at 4:50 a.m., said she saw something weird on the road. Then she screamed. When they were found, the car was off the road, gently parked at an angle, no damage. Both of them were sitting in the front seats, no injuries. But their feet, both of them, were shredded, gone below the ankles. Blood, everywhere. No sign of struggle, like they'd walked barefoot through glass for miles, or been dragged. The woman hadn't spoken since. Tom read that and never touched Highway 281 again. Sold his truck a month later. Started working a desk job at the same delivery company. Said his knees were going out. But every now and then, he'd get real quiet, staring out the window in the early morning, holding a mug of lukewarm coffee, watching the mist roll over the hills. And his wife swore on 2 separate occasions she heard him mumble something, not a name, not a prayer. Just 3 words, low and uneasy, like a warning from a dream. She has no feet. There's a long stretch of Highway 84 just before you hit Waco, where the land gets quiet in a strange way, flat fields yawning wide on either side, the horizon stretching too far, like it's trying to swallow you. It's not empty, exactly. It's just that nothing feels alive. Folks say the wind there doesn't blow right. that the sky feels closer, like it's pressing down on you. The billboard sat just outside of McGregor, facing eastbound traffic. It used to advertise for some. Local college bright red lettering, a grinning blonde girl with a cap and gown. Big dreams ahead. Come and roll today. That kind of thing. For a while, the sign was cheerful enough, something to glance at before merging onto the highway. Then she started disappearing. First it was the eyes, then the whole head. The paint didn't fade. It peeled like skin, like something had clawed her face off in tiny strokes. Local crews came out, replaced the image, reprinted it fresh. But within a week, it would rot the same way. Some blamed weather, others said it was rust under the vinyl. But rust doesn't move. And rust doesn't wave. Kyle was the first to see it clearly and the last to talk about it without shaking. He worked night shifts hauling used furniture between Lubbock and Waco, running down 84 twice a week. On a foggy Thursday in April, right around 3:17 a.m., he saw something spill over the top of the billboard like tar leaking from a can. At first, he thought it was just a bird's nest falling. Then he slowed down and saw fingers. Long ones, too many joints, pale as peeled apples, gripping the edge of the signboard, pulling the rest of it down. Whatever it was didn't fall. It slithered, slow and boneless. A dark form with no head, no face, just a mess of black rags and twitching limbs. Kyle swore it looked right at him, even without a face. It raised one hand, gave a small wave, and the next thing he knew, he was veering off into the shoulder, tires crunching gravel. By the time he looked back, it was gone. He didn't stop driving. He just didn't tell anyone for 3 days until his sister found him sitting in his truck with all the windows rolled up, mumbling about the thing that grins without a mouth. He quit hauling 2 weeks later, started drinking harder. Wouldn't go near that stretch of road. Wouldn't even drive past a billboard, but then more people saw it. Mother with her 2 kids coming back from a softball game said the figure was crouched halfway down the billboard support beam. She said it didn't move, not until they were almost past it, and then it dropped something. A dark, wet sound hit the roof of her minivan. When she pulled over, there was nothing there. No dent, no stains. But her youngest, the one who used to talk to imaginary friends, started screaming that the no-head girl was mad because no one picked her up. They had to take the kid to Temple for observation. Another time, a DPS officer swerved just before, hitting something sprawled in the middle of the lane. He thought it was a deer. It wasn't. The dash cam picked up the legs long, pale, bent wrong like broken mannequins and a black, dragging trail that led straight back to the billboard. They released the footage online. It got taken down in less than an hour. The officer retired early. Local legends grew fast. The story went that the girl on the original billboard had died. Not the model, but the girl the ad was based on, some student who never graduated. She'd gone missing during a storm near that same highway, and the college used an older photo to promote her success. But she never made it. Some say the billboard became a monument. Others say it became a grave. Either way, they never replaced the image after 2020. It just peeled, and eventually no one paid to reprint it. Now it's just white backing and rusted braces. But people still see something on it. Something darker than shadow, clinging where the girl's head used to be. I saw it myself. Once. It was summer, a dry, choking heat that made everything shimmer. I'd stopped for gas in Axtell and decided to cut across to Waco before the sun dropped. Too low. The air was heavy, and my AC had given out weeks ago, so I had the windows down, sweat pooling under my shirt. The road was empty. Not a single car either way. That was the first sign something was off. When I passed the billboard, the sun was directly behind it. Backlighting whatever was hanging off the frame. At first, I thought it was a plastic bag. Something flapping. Then it moved. Crawled down the steel beam like a lizard, too smooth, too deliberate. No noise, just motion. The limbs were wrong, too long, too thin. It had no head, just a hollow where the neck ended, ragged and pulsing like something was still breathing through it. I slowed down stupidly, curiosity beating out survival. The thing noticed. It turned it oriented toward me and lifted one arm. The hand opened, long fingers extended, bending backward at impossible angles. It waved. Then it began crawling toward the road. I floored the gas. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. I just stared into my mirror, watching it lurch forward on all fours. Then stand. It didn't chase. It didn't need to. It just stood on the shoulder, waving. Waving like it knew where I lived. Like it would wait. Later that night, after I got home, I found something in the back seat. A scrap of billboard vinyl. Red lettering, peeling. Smelled like mold and copper. I don't know how it got there. I burned it behind the shed and never went back on that highway again, but every now and then, people still report strange things near that stretch of 84. They say a figure crawls from the rusted billboard late at night, waving to anyone who passes. No one's repainted it in years. No one climbs up to check the beams. The college it once advertised shut down in 2021. After a fire gutted the administration building. They say the flames melted all the portraits on the wall, except one, a graduation photo of a girl with no nameplate. Her head was missing. It was close to midnight when Eli Pritchard saw him again. The long stretch of Highway 83 outside Abilene had always given him the creeps, even before that night, but it was the only road that cut clean from the rangelands to the city without taking the slow rancher's detour around the old pasture lands. He'd taken that road 100 times over the years, usually after a long day hauling hay, fencing, or whatever other chores his uncle lined up for him at the ranch near Holly. But he never drove it in the dark unless he absolutely had to. Night, he had no choice. His uncle's truck had a busted headlight, and the brights didn't work. The old F-150 rumbled along under a sky smeared with clouds, moonlight barely slipping through. The stereo was busted too, and the wind whistling through the cracked passenger window kept making that low moaning sound like someone was whispering just out of earshot. Eli had tried stuffing an old rag into the gap, but it didn't help much. He was about 20 minutes north of Abilene when he saw the figure on the side of the road. A man, tall and wide-shouldered, wearing a hat with a brim so low it hid most of his face. Just standing there, stock still, like one of those roadside cowboy cutouts you see outside gas stations or gun shops. At first, Eli thought maybe it was a prank. Some kind of plywood figure some kids had put up to spook drivers. But the moment his headlights caught the shape, the figure moved. The man, or whatever he was, raised his right arm in a slow, deliberate motion, the kind that made your stomach tighten because it was just too measured, too calm, too wrong. And then his finger pointed directly at Eli, not in a vague gesture, but straight and true, right at the truck, locking on to the windshield like he was aiming at Eli's chest. Eli slammed the brakes. The truck skidded a little on the gravel shoulder, the tires crunching loose rock and dry dirt. When he blinked, the cowboy was gone. No footprints. No sound, just empty road and brittle grass. He sat there for a full minute, knuckles white on. The wheel, hard hammering against his ribs. Then he muttered a curse, laughed nervously, and shook his head. "Get a grip," he said aloud, as if the sound of his own voice might ground him. He drove the rest of the way to Abilene with every muscle tight, staring at the shoulder of the road through the half-working headlight. But the figure didn't return that night. The next morning he told his uncle about it. The old man looked up from his coffee, gave a grunt, and leaned back in his chair. Tall fella? Hat pulled down? Just pointed? Eli nodded. Yeah, his. Uncle said, he's been out there for years. Eli blinked. What do you mean years? The old man sipped his coffee, then turned his gaze to the window like he was trying to see something far off in time, not just space. First time I saw him was back in '72. Same spot. Highway 83 near mile marker 245. Only I didn't stop. Just kept going. Thought I imagined it. Next day, found out a neighbor, Bobby Heller, died in a rollover. Same stretch, same time. Folks said he swerved for a deer. I don't think it was a deer. Eli stared. So what? You think he's some kind of warning? Hell if I know, the old man muttered. Some say he's a ghost. Some say he ain't never been alive. Doesn't matter what you believe. Just don't stop when he points at you. But Eli had stopped. Over the next few nights, things started happening. It began with the finger marks on the windshield. Long, greasy smears, like someone with tar-stained skin had dragged a fingertip down the passenger side glass. He tried washing them off, but every morning they came back darker, more defined, always in the same place, always pointing inward. Then came the dreams. Always the same. Eli driving down the highway, headlights flickering, the wind screaming, louder than it should. And then the cowboy, standing in the road, not on the side anymore, but dead center. This time, when the lights hit him, his face was visible. Pale, sun-cracked skin stretched tight over a skull-like grin. Empty sockets stared where eyes should have been. And when he pointed, Eli felt something sharp bloom in his chest, like cold steel sliding through him. He'd wake up gasping, soaked in sweat. By the fourth night, Eli was too scared to sleep. He started seeing the cowboy in places that didn't make sense. In the corner of the barn, behind the hay bales, or across the field at dusk, watching without moving. He told his uncle again, begged him to explain. The old man just shook his head. You stopped. That's what made it worse. What does he want? Eli asked. His uncle didn't answer. That night, Eli drove back to the same stretch of highway. He figured maybe if he went back, faced it down, whatever curse had latched onto him might break. Or maybe he just wanted to see if he was losing his mind. Around 11:42 p.m., just past the same marker, he saw him again. Same stance. Same silence. Only this time, when the headlights swept over him, the cowboy didn't just point. He moved, one slow step onto the road, then another. His boots didn't make a sound on the pavement, but Eli could feel something, like pressure building in the air, like the whole night was holding its breath. Eli floored it. The truck surged forward. The cowboy didn't flinch. As the truck roared closer, his finger kept pointing, tracking the windshield as if it were magnetized. Eli swerved at the last second. The truck fishtailed into the ditch, skidding hard against a rusted barbed wire fence before coming to a stop. Eli's head slammed against the window. Stars burst across his vision. When he blinked back to awareness, the cowboy was standing beside the driver's side door, and then he vanished. No flash, no sound, just gone. Eli made it back to the ranch by dawn, dragging the battered truck behind a tow chain. His uncle didn't ask any questions. The marks stopped showing up after that, but the dreams didn't, and Eli still won't drive Highway 83 after dark. Nobody who's seen the cowboy ever does again. Some say he's a ghost from a lynching that happened a century ago, left to wander the roadside in search of justice. Others say he's a cursed soul, a drifter who made a deal with something darker than the devil. There are folks who believe he's not a man at all, but something ancient wearing a cowboy's skin, pointing at you not to warn. But to Mark Dot, and if you're ever out past Abilene at night, and you see him standing by the road, do yourself a favor. Don't stop. Don't slow down. And whatever you do, don't look back. The first time I saw her, I thought it was a prank. A late-night scarecrow set up by some drunk kids from the college town a few miles down Route 66. It was just past midnight, and I'd been driving eastbound from Amarillo toward Shamrock, the highway yawning like a black tongue between the scrubby shoulders of the Texas Panhandle. The road was empty, save for the occasional jackrabbit darting out from the mesquite. I had the radio on low, some old country song barely above the hum of the tires. When my headlights caught her, she was walking directly toward me, dead center in the westbound lane. Not on the shoulder. Not drifting like someone confused or looking for help. No, this woman was deliberate. Her arms were stiff at her sides, her head tilted down slightly, but her eyes were fixed straight ahead. And she was wearing a nun's habit, jet black with a white coif, the cloth fluttering even though the air outside my truck was dead still. That was the first thing that made my stomach drop. The second was the rosary swinging from her right hand, not like a limp dangle. It was arcing back and forth like a metronome, steady, too steady, even as she walked into a crosswind that didn't exist. I slowed down, then stopped on the shoulder with my hazard lights blinking. My hands were already on the door handle before I noticed something else, her mouth. It was moving, yes, but there was no sound. None. The window was down. I should have heard her feet crunching gravel or the whisper of cloth, but there was nothing. And her mouth, pale and tense, kept forming the same two syllables, again and again. At first I thought it was a prayer. Maybe Latin, some old Catholic chant, but the closer she got, the more I realized she wasn't praying. She was saying, "Turn back." No sound, just the motion of her lips. Turn back. Turn back, over and over like a broken loop. I didn't wait to see what would happen when she reached me. I threw the truck in gear and peeled out, watching in the rear view as she passed under the streetlight a few hundred yards behind me. And that's when I noticed her eyes. No pupils, no whites. Just pits, hollow, like her skull was a cracked mask and something darker waited behind it. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't talk about it either. You don't bring something like that up unless you want to be the town crazy. But a week later, at the Shamrock Diner, I overheard a couple talking about their drive from Oklahoma. Said they saw a nun on the road, near McLean, walking straight into oncoming traffic without flinching, her veil flapping like a crow's wings. The husband laughed it off, said it had to be a hitchhiker in costume. But his wife wasn't laughing. She said the same thing I saw, the rosary swinging too hard, too even, and the mouth moving without a voice. That's when I started digging. Route 66 has history. Everyone knows that. But not everyone knows what happened near McLean in the summer of 1972. The story was buried deep, not in newspapers, but in church records. I found it through a cousin of mine who works at the diocese in Lubbock. Said a nun from a small convent near Groom went missing back then. Sister Agnes. They found her car parked neatly by the side of the road, door closed, keys in the ignition, but no sign of her. Locals said she was devoted but unstable. She'd been having visions. Claimed she saw the devil's face in the dust storms. Said the Lord warned her of something coming on the road. Something terrible. They chalked her disappearance up to a mental break. Maybe she wandered off and got lost. Maybe coyotes got her. But nobody ever turned up. A few months later, 3 teens on a road trip were found dead just west of the same stretch. Car wrapped around a tree. No skid marks. No signs they even tried to stop. The only strange thing was a rosary hanging from the rearview mirror, not theirs. One of the kids' moms swore her son was an atheist, never owned a rosary. But the beads were old, hand-wrapped. The metal cross bent like it had been clenched in someone's fist too long. Over the years, more stories trickled in, always at night. Always the same stretch of Route 66. A nun walking against traffic. Never running. Never crossing lanes. Just pacing against the flow like she was trying to stop something coming the other way. And always those two words on her lips. Turn back. I tried not to dwell on it. But when I saw her again, 3 years later to the day, I knew it wasn't coincidence. I was driving back from my brother's place in Elk City, late past midnight. Again, this time I was ready. I had a dash cam running. I even had my phone out. And sure enough, there she was. Just past the old water tower, walking down the center line like it belonged to her. I slowed again. Against every instinct, I got out of the truck, phone recording in hand, and stood on the shoulder. My legs were shaking. The night was too quiet. Even the cicadas had stopped. She kept coming. Same stiff arms, same swinging rosary, same pale lips mouthing turn back. But this time, she stopped 10 feet away, dead still. And her lips froze mid-motion. I lifted the phone, trying to speak. Who? Are you? She didn't answer. Instead, she raised her left hand and pointed. Not at me, not at the road. At the sky, I looked up. Nothing, just stars. When I looked back down, she was gone. Not walked away, gone, like smoke blown off the asphalt. My phone was still recording, but all it captured was static and a long, low hum that made my ears ache. Don't drive that stretch anymore. I take the long way around. Adds an hour and a half to any trip, but I'll take the gas cost over the weight in my chest every time I pass that patch of highway. I've shared this with a few people. Most laugh, a few ask questions, and some go looking. One guy, a reporter from Dallas, even parked his camper overnight near where she's been seen. He posted updates every hour. Then he went quiet. When they found his vehicle, the camper door was open, the bed untouched, and his phone lying on the ground with a shattered screen. No one's seen him since. All they found inside was a single photograph tacked to the wall. A black and white still of a nun walking down the center of Route 66. The strange thing? It was taken from above, like a drone shot. But his drone was still packed in its case, and the rosary in the photo? It wasn't swinging. It was wrapped around her neck like a noose, and her mouth wasn't moving. It was open, like she was screaming. But no one's ever heard her. Not yet. They always warned me about that stretch of Highway 21 where it crosses the Brazos River just outside Brian. My cousin, who lived down in College Station, told me stories when we were kids. He'd whisper them late at night, always after our parents were asleep, always when the wind outside made the oak trees scrape the windows. He'd tell me about the girl who bled from her mouth and her ears, who stood on the side of the road, in a soaked dress like she'd just crawled out of the river. I thought he was messing with me. One of those stories passed around to scare little kids, something he probably made up after watching too many horror movies. I was wrong. That night, I was driving back from Austin. It was late past 2 in the morning, and I'd been helping a buddy move into his new place near Round Rock. We loaded trucks all day in the August heat, drank cheap beer to numb the strain, and by the time I was heading home, I was running. On caffeine pills and a 6-hour-old burger that had gone cold on the dashboard. I'd taken the back roads like I always did. Less traffic, less highway patrol, and something about that root dark trees pressing in on either side, long stretches of nothing but fence posts and pasture always calmed my nerves. Until I hit the bridge. It came out of nowhere. 1 minute I was staring down a black ribbon of road. The next, the beams of my headlights caught the rusted steel trusses of the old Brazos River Bridge. That thing had been there forever. My dad once said it had the bones of a Civil War ghost hanging in its frame, and I always thought he was being poetic. But that night, I believed him. The river below was swollen. We'd had rains all week, and the Brazos had risen enough to kiss the underside of the bridge. You could hear it if you rolled down your window, the sound of angry, rushing water clawing at the concrete supports. I didn't roll it down, though. Not yet. She was just standing there, right at the start of the bridge, off to the shoulder, arms dangling like dead weight, head tilted slightly to the left. At first I thought she was a hitchhiker or maybe a kid whose car had broken down. But as I slowed, my high beams hit her dead on and my foot instinctively eased off the gas. She was soaked, head to toe. Her dress clung to her skin like tissue. Paper, some kind of pale white thing with little blue flowers on it. Her hair was plastered to her face and her eyes. God help me, her eyes were too wide. Not scared, just staring. Her lips moved like she was whispering something, but there was no sound, not even the tap of her feet shifting in the gravel. Just the roar of the river and the hum of my engine. I didn't want to stop, but I did. Something told me not to, but that same something pulled my foot to the brake pedal anyway. I rolled down my window just a crack. I don't know why I did it. Maybe to ask if she was hurt. Maybe because some stupid part of me didn't want to believe what I was seeing. Before I even got a word out, her hand darted forward. It didn't. Touched the glass. It passed through it. Like it wasn't there. Like the window didn't exist. She grabbed my jacket. Cold fingers clamped around my collarbone, and I felt them dig into my skin. My chest seized. My whole body jerked, like I'd just been shocked. The truck stalled. The radio fizzed out in a shriek of static, and all I could hear was her breathing. Now heavy and wet, like lungs half full of water. I turned to look at her, and she was right there. Half her face inside the cab of my truck. Her mouth hung open, dark and dripping. Her teeth were black. Her eyes were red-rimmed and leaking, not tears, but thick, oily blood that stained the side of her face. "Let me in," she gurgled. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. Then, just as quick, she vanished. Gone. Like she was never there. My truck roared back to life on its own. Headlights flared. The radio jumped to life again, blasting some country song I didn't recognize. I floored it. Tires screeched. I didn't stop until I hit Caldwell. And even then, I didn't breathe right until I was in the diner bathroom, splashing water on my face and staring at the bruises on my neck. 5 perfect fingerprints. Pale. Cold. I could still feel them even as they faded. I didn't sleep that night. I drove the rest of the way home with every light on in my apartment, watching the corners of the room for any hint of white fabric or bleeding eyes. My cousin was the first person I called the next morning. I told him everything. He didn't. Laughed. He didn't even act surprised. He just said, "You saw her." That's when I learned her name was Eliza. She died in the 70s. A college girl from Texas A&M who went missing after a fight with her boyfriend. They found her car parked at the bridge, empty. The front bumper scraped like it had kissed the guardrail. They never found her body, but some folks say the Brazos doesn't keep its dead long. They say it spits them back when they've got something left to say. Eliza had plenty to say. That's why. Sometimes, especially after a heavy rain, drivers report seeing her again. Standing there, bleeding, whispering. Always on the shoulder. Always soaked to the bone. And if you're dumb enough to roll down your window, you won't just see her. She see you too, and she doesn't forget. I tried to forget. I moved out of Texas a year later. Sold the truck. Got rid of everything that reminded me of that night. But I still feel her sometimes. In the shower, when the water turns cold without warning. In the mirror, when there's fog but no breath. In the car, when the window fogs up from the inside, and someone writes the word help in the condensation. Last week, I got a text from an unknown number. No name. Just a photo dot. It was a picture of my new apartment building, taken from the street, from the driver's seat of a car, judging by the angle. And there, faintly in the reflection of the driver's side mirror, was a soaked girl in a white dress with blue flowers. Her mouth was open, bleeding. On FM 1069, just outside the old oil fields near Refugio, there's a stretch of road where the brush grows thick and the mesquite seems to lean inward, like the land itself is tired and folding in on itself. That patch of highway doesn't show up right on GPS. You'll miss it if you're not looking, even though it's clearly marked. Folks who live in the area don't drive it after dark, and if you ask them why, they'll usually shrug and mutter something about hogs or drunk drivers. But you stay long enough, buy enough beer at the gas station, and someone always gets loose-lipped and tells you about the deer. Or, more accurately, the thing they keep calling a deer, even though at ISN single quotes T. it starts the same for most. You're heading east, maybe coming back from a fishing trip on Copano Bay, maybe just trying to shortcut your way to Victoria. It's always past midnight. The fog lays low and thick like a drowned sheet across the fields, and the bugs thump against the windshield in an erratic rhythm, like a warning you don't quite understand. The road narrows, no street lights for miles, just the painted lines glowing weakly under the brights, and then you see it, standing in the shoulder just beyond the grass line. A deer dot, except not really. Its legs are wrong. Too long, too thin. The joints bend strange, like it's standing backward or bracing for a fall that never comes. Its fur isn't fur. It looks matted down, patchy, like an old rug soaked through and hung out to rot. Its head doesn't move right. It doesn't twitch like a deer's head should. It turns slow, mechanical, like someone's twisting it on a stick. And its eyes don't reflect red. They shine white like frost on a window pane, dead and too wide. They look right through your windshield, through your skin, like they're memorizing something. Most people stop. Something about the thing forces you to ease off the gas, no matter how bad you want to punch it. There's this pressure in your chest like you're driving through molasses, like the car itself is hesitating. And that's when your headlights catch the thing on its back. You can't see it clearly at first. The deer thing blocks it with its shifting, mangled frame. But then it takes a step some dragging, twitching mockery of a step, and the thing on its back rises up. It doesn't ride like a human. It clings, wrapped around the spine, arms and legs curled tight like a child piggybacking on a parent. But backwards. Its face presses into the base of the deer's skull, or what passes for it, and its hair, if its hair hangs low, stringy and thick like water weeds. Its limbs are pale and raw, too thin for any body that size. Its hands are wrong. Long fingers that taper to blackened ends, curled into the ribs of the thing beneath it. You never see a mouth, but you feel one. Like it's speaking under your skin, whispering without sound. That's usually when the engine dies. Travis McNeil, local mechanic, swore on his mother's grave that it happened to him. He was towing an old Bronco back from a property north of town, late October. Clear sky when he started. Then, out of nowhere, mist rolled in like it had been waiting for him. He said he slowed when he saw the deer thing. Thought maybe it was hurt. Thought maybe he could nudge it off with the bumper. Then he saw the thing on its back raise its head. He never described the face. Never could, he said. Just that when it looked at him, his nose started bleeding. Both nostrils. Said it felt like ice water had been poured down his spine, and his hands wouldn't move. Not even to shift into reverse. The truck just sat there, silent, That's when the deer started walking toward him. He said it didn't gallop or bolt like normal deer. It just stepped, one leg at a time, too tall, too slow. The closer it got, the louder this ringing got in his ears, like a pressure cooker about to blow. He blacked out before it reached the hood. Woke up 4 hours later, parked sideways in a ditch with the Bronco still chained behind him and his pants soaked through. They never fixed that truck. Every time they changed the starter, it'd fry within minutes. Battery too. Like something. Scorched the inside from a distance. And Travis? Well, he doesn't go out at night anymore. There's another story. This one from a girl named Lila, 17 at the time, who snuck out with her boyfriend to smoke near the abandoned ranch off FM 1069. She'd heard the stories but figured it was just small-town garbage, a way to keep kids from partying too. Far off, they parked near mile marker 12, where the trees start leaning like they're bowing towards something buried deep. They sat on the hood, lit up, and laughed about ghosts and weird deer and everything else teenagers aren't supposed to believe in until it's too late. Then she heard hooves. Not galloping, not clacking, just dot-dot stepping, uneven, rhythmic. The kind of sound that shouldn't carry that far in the damp, but did. Her boyfriend saw it first. Froze solid, eyes locked past the brush line. Lila turned and saw it standing, half in, half out of the mist. The legs, the head, the puppet face, all of it, just like the story said. But the thing on its back was already watching her. Its face half lowered over the deer's side like it was stretching to get a better look. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. All she could do was stare. Then it raised a hand, just one. And the rosary on her wrist, she wore it from her grandmother's. Funeral snapped clean off. Every bead rolled off the hood and dropped into the dirt like something flicked them. Her boyfriend ran. Left her there. She says the creature didn't follow. Just stood there, hand still lifted, until the fog swallowed it whole. That was 5 years ago. She never saw the boyfriend again. Folks say he left town, joined the Navy, went off to Guam. Or maybe disappeared altogether. But Lila stayed. Doesn't talk much anymore. Works nights at the diner by the truck stop, doesn't wear jewelry, and flinches if you mention deer. There are more. So many more. A cyclist saw it pacing him on the opposite side of the road without moving its legs. A trucker swears the deer grinned at him when he hit his air horn. A kid went missing for 3 days and came back mute, with scratches down his back in a pattern that looked more like handwriting than wounds. They say the thing on its back changes. Sometimes it's small. Sometimes it's bigger than the deer itself. But it's always there. Always holding on like it's steering or feeding or waiting for something. Locals tried to get the county to close the road. Didn't work. Then they tried to bless it. Crosses on the signs, holy water on the mile markers, nothing stuck. One priest went missing during the blessing. His car was found running on the shoulder, doors open, communion kit spilled across the seat. He was never found out, so they stopped trying. Now people just warn you. If you're heading east after dark, stay off 1069. Take the long way. Go around. And if you have no choice, if you find yourself there by accident or arrogance, don't. Stop when you see the deer. Don't slow down. Don't meet its eyes. And for the love of God, don't flash your brights. Because if you do, the thing riding its back will see you. And if it sees you, it will remember. And it will follow. Maybe not right away. Maybe not that night. But one day, when you're walking, alone or driving a quiet road, it'll find you again. And this time, it won't just watch. The road called Devil's Backbone twisted through the Texas hill country like a serpent that had grown lazy with age. It was beautiful by day, with limestone cliffs and cedar trees climbing along the ridges, but by night, especially during During a storm. It became something else entirely. Locals didn't like to talk much about what it became. Even the ones who did would keep their voices low and eyes darting toward windows. That was the thing about stories from these parts. They came heavy with a kind of weight that made folks uneasy. Like they weren't quite stories at all. Cal had driven the backbone once before, years back when he was in college, but it was daylight then, warm and easy. Now it was different. He was older, married, and driving back from a funeral in Junction. His wife Marla had stayed home, too pregnant to handle the winding roads, and Cal had promised he'd be back before midnight. That was before the rain came down like judgment and the GPS lost its mind, stuttering and spinning him back onto the narrow road that snaked across cliffs and dips. Like a drunk on stilts. The storm hit its peak as he reached a particularly sharp bend. Lightning forked across the sky in jagged white cracks, revealing the gnarled silhouettes of mesquite and oak that leaned too close to the roadside. Cal gripped the wheel tight. Leaning forward like that might help him see better through the slashing rain. And then he saw him, just up ahead, through the sheets of water and the haze of headlights. There was a man standing by the guardrail, holding a lantern. The light flickered an unnatural color pale, almost blue, and the figure waved slowly, deliberately, as if signaling him to stop. Cal's first instinct was to keep driving. He wasn't the kind to stop for hitchhikers, especially not on a night like this. But there was something about the man's motion, not desperate, not panicked, just insistent. He eased the truck over, tires crunching on wet gravel, wipers still screeching. The man didn't move, just stood there, one arm holding the lantern, aloft, the other by his side. As Cal rolled the window down, the cold wind slapped him in the face, full of wet leaves and something sour beneath the rain. The man stepped forward. He wore an old-fashioned coat, long and black, and his face was half-shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat soaked through with rain. The lantern bobbed as he approached the window. Cal leaned over, squinting up at him. The man didn't speak at first, just leaned in slowly, the lantern's blue glow casting strange, shifting shadows across his face. His eyes didn't reflect the light. They swallowed it. Cal opened his mouth to ask if he needed help, but before he could say anything, the man spoke in a voice that wasn't loud, but somehow cut clean through the wind and rain. Calvin Dwyer, born May 4th, 1985. Cal froze. He hadn't told the man his name. Died August 3rd, 2025, the man continued, breath fogging up the window despite the rain. In a crash on Devil's Backbone. Windshield shattered. Neck broken. Died before the first responders arrived. Then, he turned and walked back toward the guardrail, vanishing into the storm like he'd never been there. Cal sat frozen, heart slamming in his chest, rain soaking into the seat through the half-open window. He jerked the truck into gear, cursing himself, cursing the road, cursing whatever the hell that had just been. He didn't even make it another quarter mile. The curve came out of nowhere, sharper than it should have been, slick with moss and mud. Cal hit the brakes too late. The truck slid sideways, then forward, plowing through the rusted guardrail like tissue paper. The last thing he saw was the limestone cliff dropping away beneath him. The last thing he heard was the rattle of glass and steel folding into itself. And then there was quiet. They didn't find Cal's body until the next morning. A jogger on the trail below spotted the wreckage. Marla identified him from a scar on his shoulder. The coroner said he died instantly. The sheriff who filed the report had lived near the backbone his whole life. He didn't ask why Cal had pulled over just before the curve. Didn't question the wet footprints found by the driver's side door bear, not booted, no tread. Didn't wonder how Cal's name and birth date had been scribbled in the corner of a water-damaged receipt on the dashboard in shaky, unfamiliar handwriting. He just wrote it up, signed it, and muttered under his breath on the way out of the station. Something about the man with the lantern. Something about storms. You see, folks who've lived out here long enough, they know better. They don't drive the backbone during a storm. And if they absolutely have to, they keep their eyes straight ahead, because sometimes at that same cursed curve, the rain will thin just long enough to show you a man with a lantern. He won't shout. He won't wave frantically. He'll just raise that light, steady and calm, and wait. And if you stop, if you roll down your window like Cal did, he'll lean in and whisper something so personal it stops your breath. He'll speak your name. He'll give you the date. And when he's done, there's nothing you can do to change it, because it's not a warning. It's a promise. The desert outside Marfa never truly goes dark. The sky stays smeared in rust and violet long after the sun has set, and the earth breathes heat well into the night like it's reluctant to let the day go. There's something about the stillness. Out there, the emptiness that hums louder than silence, the kind of place where your own heartbeat sounds foreign. That's where Travis Blythe found himself, driving east on US 90 with the windows down and the radio low, just to keep the hum of loneliness from swallowing him whole. He'd been on the road 3 days, headed home to Houston after walking out on a job in Tucson he didn't even bother quitting properly. Just stood up from the desk, got in the car, and didn't stop driving until New Mexico was behind him. The desert had always been his reset button, but by the time he hit the stretch near Marfa, the air had started to feel heavier, like something was riding shotgun. He hadn't invited. It was nearly 11 p.m. when he saw the flames. At first, it looked like brush fire. A flickering orange light just off the shoulder, maybe a mile ahead. But as he got closer, he saw the shape was upright, moving, human. He braked hard. Dust kicked up behind him. The figure stepped into view, right into the halo of his headlights. Man was completely on fire. Head to toe, every inch of him was burning. His clothes had melted to his skin, yet he wasn't flailing or screaming. He stood calmly at the edge of the road, left arm at his side, right thumb extended toward the eastbound lane. Travis froze. His first thought wasn't to help or run. It was confusion. The man didn't look like he was in pain. He wasn't collapsing or convulsing. He was just standing there, like it was the most normal thing in the world to be burning alive on the edge of a 2-lane highway in West Texas. Travis rolled the window down a crack. The heat blasted in, dry and angry. He could hear the fire, the way it crackled and popped like a meat smoker at full tilt. But still, the man didn't scream. He turned slightly, as if acknowledging the stopped car, and began to walk toward the passenger side. Travis's brain told him to drive. Something primal screamed in his chest. But his hand moved on its own, reached across the seat, and popped the door open. The man got in. The smell hit him first. Not just smoke, it was deeper, fleshier, like burnt pork and gasoline. The passenger seat hissed and sizzled under the weight of him. Travis could hear the fabric cooking. He turned and looked straight at the man's face, or what was left of it. There were no eyes, no lips, just blackened sockets and rows of teeth that hadn't cracked or charred. The fire never touched the teeth. The man didn't speak. He just looked straight ahead. Travis stared. He wanted to speak, but his throat had sealed up. His hands trembled against the wheel. He didn't ask where the man was headed. Didn't ask why he wasn't dying. He just pulled back onto the highway and drove. For miles, the road stretched empty in both directions. Every so often, Travis would glance sideways, hoping the man had vanished. But he was still there, fire licking across his scalp, flames reflected. In the windshield, heat bleeding through the cabin. The plastic around the vents began to warp. The leather on the dash bubbled. Travis's own skin beaded with sweat, then blisters. He didn't know how long he'd been driving when the man finally turned out it was slow, like a head on a hinge, creaking toward him. Then the mouth opened and the voice came out. "You forgot." Travis nearly swerved off the road. His heart punched against his ribs. He blinked, tried to focus, but the road was rippling like a mirage. What did I forget?" The man didn't answer. He just pointed. One burnt, blistered finger extended toward the dashboard. Travis followed the motion and saw the GPS. There was no map, just static. The road had vanished. The little triangle that showed his position blinked red, then black, then disappeared. "You left me," the man said. His voice was wet now, gurgled. It sounded like someone talking through tar. Travis's eyes darted to the mirror. The flames were spreading, not just to the seat, but to the back seat, the floor mats, the ceiling. His skin felt like it was peeling off his arms. He screamed and slammed the brakes. The car fishtailed, veered off into the gravel, and finally rolled to a stop against a weathered mile marker. He flung the door open and stumbled out into the desert night, gasping, pawing at his clothes like he was the one on fire. But there were no flames. Not on him. Not on the car. The interior was empty. Passenger seat untouched. No burns. No smell. The GPS returned to normal. US to 90 stretched ahead, just like it always had. Travis stood there for minutes, maybe longer. Eventually, he got back in the car, started the engine, and drove until he reached a rest stop near Del Rio. Too shaken to go further. He never told anyone the full story. Not even when the cops came knocking a week later. A rental car had been found near the border, charred to a crisp. No ID, no license plates. No driver. Just one thing inside. A melted rosary wrapped tight around the steering wheel. And the passenger seat? Burned clean through. They found Travis's fingerprints on the wheel, though he swore he'd never seen the car before. That didn't matter. The pictures were enough. He moved back to Arizona after that. Refused to drive at night. Refused to go near Marfa. But sometimes, if the wind came in just right off the desert, he said he could still smell it, not fire. Not gas. But skin. They say the hitchhiker still appears on that stretch of 90 near the Marfa Lights viewing area. Always during the hottest part of the night. You'll see him walking against traffic, glowing like an open flame. No screaming. No hurry. Just a steady thumb in the air. And if you stop, they say the ride always ends the same way, with a car found hundreds of miles away, burned down to the frame. No driver. No ID. Just a single melted thing in the seat beside him. Waiting for the next ride. They always say Buc-ee's is a safe stop. Cleanest restrooms, cheapest gas, biggest beef jerky wall in Texas. But somewhere along Highway 71, out past Bastrop and before La Grange, there's one Buc-ee's no one seems to remember building. It's got the same giant cartoon beaver smiling wide from a 100-foot-high LED sign, waving with those oversized teeth and little red cap. Looks just like all the others. But this one's different. It's not on the Buc-ee's website, no receipts, print store number, and locals just call it the Ghost Pit Stop. I didn't believe any of that nonsense. Not until I pulled in with a shaking radiator and a gas gauge needle sinking fast, and found out firsthand what they meant. It was late September. Heat still thick in the air even after dusk. I'd been driving west from Houston for nearly 4 hours, trying to make it to a cousin's place in Marble Falls before midnight. My phone battery had died 2 hours earlier, and the GPS in my beat-up F-150 kept spinning circles like it didn't know where the hell it was. Just trees and empty stretches of road, barely any cars. My check engine light had been flashing on and off the past 20 miles. and the engine started letting out this sad little hiss every time I accelerated. I just started thinking I might have to pull over and sleep in the truck when the Buc-ee's sign lit up the tree line like a flare dot. It looked brand new. Gas price lit in green, restroom signs flashing with friendly little arrows, and that massive grinning beaver shining from the top of a metal pylon. I pulled in with a little sigh of relief. There were no other cars. No semis parked to the side, no RVs lined up by the dumpsters. Just my truck, the gas pumps, and that giant store glowing like a stadium. Inside was cold. Too cold, like someone had the AC set to 40, even though it was still 80-something outside. I walked past racks of fresh fudge and plastic Buc-ee's bobbleheads. Everything was in perfect order. Clean floors, fully stocked shelves, but no workers, no voices. Just the soft hum of freezers and some distant song on the speakers, maybe Johnny Cash, but the words didn't sound quite right. I found the restroom and washed the sweat off my face, still trying to shake off the creeping unease that had started the moment I stepped inside. When I came out, there was a man standing near the soda fountains. He wore a Buc-ee's employee shirt, but it hung loose, like it didn't fit him right. His back was to me. He didn't move, not even when the fountain machine hissed and burbled beside him. I said something like, "Hey, you work here?" He didn't turn, didn't even twitch. Just stood there, too still, like he wasn't breathing. Then, just as I stepped closer, he walked away without a sound and disappeared behind the swinging doors marked employees only. I didn't follow. Something about the way he moved didn't sit right. Too smooth, like he was gliding instead of walking. I figured, maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I was overtired. I paid cash at the self-checkout, the only one working, grabbed a bag of jerky, and headed back out. My truck started on the first try. For a second, I thought I was lucky. But when I put it in drive and tried to pull out of the lot, the engine died with a heavy clunk. I turned the key again. Nothing. Tried again. Just clicking. Dead. That's when I noticed something wrong with the light. The beaver sign above, once brightly glowing red and yellow, now pulsed slower, dimmer, like it was breathing. The smile on the beaver's face looked wider. Not the cheerful grin I remembered from 5 minutes ago. This one was toothier. Meaner. I could swear the eyes were watching me. Really watching. The kind of stare you feel on the back of your neck. I stayed in the truck. Locked the doors. Told myself it was all in my head, and then I saw a dot. It wasn't a person. Not quite. It stood behind the giant pole that held the beaver sign. A shadow, too tall and too wide to be human, but somehow shaped like one. At first, it didn't move, just stood there. Then I blinked, and it was closer. Still behind the sign, still not moving. But closer. I turned the key again. Still dead. My palms were sweating. I wiped them on my jeans and dared to glance back up. Now the thing was half visible, peeking from behind the pole. Its head was long and narrow, tilted just a bit too far to one side, like a curious dog. And it was smiling. The smile didn't have lips. Just wide rows of what looked like polished bone, not teeth, but something smoother, almost like ivory. The eyes were the worst part, hollow and wet, like sockets filled with oil or the kind of black you see when you stare into deep water. At night, it stepped out. 1 foot, then another. The limbs moved with a sort of twitchy hesitation, like a puppet jerked on strings. It was tall, easily 8 feet. Its body seemed to shimmer, like heat waves on asphalt, only there was no heat. The night had gone ice cold. My breath fogged the inside of the windshield. Then it lifted its hand. Not a wave. Not a threat. It pointed right at my truck. I panicked. Fumbled for my phone. Dead, of course. I reached for the glove box, thinking maybe I had a battery pack or a flare, anything. When I looked back up, it was right next to the driver's side window, not walking. Just there. The grin was pressed against the glass, but the surface didn't seem to matter. I could feel its breath, wet and warm, crawling across my cheek. It tilted its head, stared into my eyes, and smiled wider. My hand hit the horn by accident, and the sound echoed across the empty lot, but nothing happened. The lights didn't flicker. No one came running. Just me and that thing. Then it raised one finger and tapped the window tap, and then the glass started to bend, not crack, bend, like plastic in a microwave. My chest went tight. My vision started to blur. I could hear something inside my own ears like a whisper, but too low to make out. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. Gone. No sound. No movement. The truck roared back to life without me touching the key. I slammed it into reverse, tore out of the lot, and didn't stop until I hit the lights of LaGrange. When I finally pulled into a Shell station, I stumbled out and collapsed on the pavement. An old man came over to help me, asked what happened, and when I said I'd come from the Buc-ee's off 71, he frowned and said there wasn't one out that way. Not for at least 50 miles. I swore I saw it, described the big sign, the cold store, the smiling guy by the soda machine. He just nodded real slow and told me I wasn't the first to say something like that. I never found it again. Not on maps. Not on satellite, not on foot. But every so often, I catch a glimpse of that grinning beaver on the side of the highway. And sometimes I wonder if I pulled over, would it still be there? Would the light still be flickering? Would that shadow still be waiting? And would I get back in my truck next time? Or would I be the one standing by the window, smiling at someone else, waiting for the engine to die? It started with a local kid named Matteo, who lived 2 miles west of Uvalde, off a narrow gravel stretch of road where the mesquites leaned low and the wind sounded like breath between the branches. Matteo worked night shift at the Dairy Queen. Off Main, nothing special, just enough to help out his mom. He'd ride his bike home most nights, headphones in, light clipped to his handlebars, wind tugging at his shirt as the stars blinked high above the ranchlands. That night, though, he stopped pedaling. The moon was low and swollen yellow, casting long shadows over the grass and fencing. It was 2:11 a.m. when he coasted to a slow stop near the bend just before the cattle gate, squinting into the bar ditch. There was someone down there, crouched low with a shovel, the blade whispering into dirt like a slow heartbeat. The figure wore something like coveralls, maybe denim, hard to tell in the dark. No flashlight, no phone glow, just digging. Same rhythmic motion: lift, drop, scrape, toss. Like they'd been doing it for hours. Like they weren't ever going. To stop, Matteo called out, "Hey, you good?" No answer. The figure didn't even look up, just kept working the shovel. He felt this strange pull then, not in his body but behind his ribs, like something was unzipping inside him. He shook it off, told himself it was late and he was tired. He biked the rest of the way home fast, didn't look back. He told his cousin about it the next day. Julian was a delivery driver and didn't believe in much, least of all ghost stories. But the next night, Julian drove out there with a six-pack and a flashlight, parking by the ditch just before 2 a.m. The clock on the dash clicked over to 2:13 and there it was. Just like Matteo said, someone digging. Same motion, same sound. Like the earth itself was telling him not to interfere. Julian got out, walked over, flashlight beam cutting through the weeds. He called out louder than Matteo had. "You okay down there?" Nothing. The figure didn't pause. He got closer. He noticed then how the soil didn't seem to rise, no matter how long the shovel moved. The dirt just disappeared when tossed, like it never hit the ground. and the figure's breathing, there wasn't any. Julian turned to leave, but his feet didn't move. His arms stayed limp at his sides. The flashlight slipped from his hand, and slowly, one step at a time, he climbed down into the ditch and took the spare shovel, leaning against the fence post. No one remembered seeing him again after that. Word got around, like it always does in a town that size. Folks started watching from a distance. No one wanted to get too close. They'd sit in their trucks, engines running, doors locked. At exactly 2:30, the figure would be there again, shovel in hand. Some nights there were 2 figures. A week later there were 3. After a while, they all wore the same thing, denim coveralls soaked with dust and dark streaks. No one ever saw them arrive. No one ever saw them leave. An old rancher named Glenn Mathis tried to block it off. Piled dead mesquite and cinder blocks over the ditch, said it was too dangerous. Next morning, it was clear again. Not just cleared, but tidy. No debris, no tire tracks. The ditch had been restored, as if the land itself had rules Glenn had violated. He left town 3 days later, sold his property for a fraction of what it was worth, and wouldn't talk to anyone about it. A deputy finally put in a request to the sheriff's office to investigate. His name was Curtis Lee. He drove out there with a body cam and backup an hour behind him. His final radio message was clipped, full of static. "There's something wrong with the," and then silence. They found his cruiser parked sideways. On the road, engine cold, lights dead. His body cam was still recording, but the footage after 2:13 a.m. was static and flickers. Just before the feed cut out, the last visible frame showed Curtis standing at the edge of the ditch, staring down, lips moving like he was repeating something under his breath. His wife said he came home the next morning, clothes torn, face filthy. He wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat, just sat on the porch holding an invisible shovel, fingers twitching like they were wrapped around a handle that wasn't there. She drove him to a hospital in San Antonio. He escaped 2 days later, stole a county work truck, and was last seen walking toward the ditch near Uvalde. At 2:13 a.m., local officials quietly rerouted traffic around that stretch. Said there was infrastructure damage, posted vague signs about erosion, even put up a camera. It stopped working after 3 nights. Melted from the inside out, the text said. No footage was ever retrieved. A woman named Darlene, who ran the gas station outside town, said she saw something one night she couldn't forget. She'd driven past that area heading back from a late shift in Eagle Pass. At 2:12, she passed the cattle gate. Her radio shut off by itself. Lights dimmed. A sharp pressure filled her ears like a vacuum was sucking out her thoughts. Then she saw the ditch. 7 figures digging now. No faces. Just dirt-covered arms and the glint of shovel blades. They moved in sync. Lift, drop, scrape, toss. Like a machine powered by silence and dread. She swore one of them turned its head. No eyes, just a hollow space where a face should have been. After that, people stopped going out there. Even the daredevil teens, the ones who made TikToks and tried summoning games, wouldn't get within a mile of it. The land was wrong. Some said the ditch wasn't for burying, but for uncovering. But no one ever found what was being dug up. Or if they did, they didn't live long enough to tell. Every now and then, a drifter would disappear. A backpack found on the shoulder. A truck abandoned nearby with the key still in the ignition. Always after 2 a.m. Always near the bend where the mesquites lean low and the moon cuts. Sideways through the brush. What terrified people most wasn't just the digging. It was the whisper of familiarity. Some said they recognized the figures. An uncle who vanished in the 70s. A friend who drowned in the river but was never recovered. A teacher who went missing after quitting her job without warning. The digging had been going on longer than anyone realized. It's 2:13 a.m. again now. If you drive out past Uvalde and stop at the bend, roll your windows down and cut the engine. Don't move, just listen. You'll hear it. The rhythmic scrape of shovels. And if you're unlucky enough to lock eyes with one of them, if you see the emptiness where their face should be, something behind your ribs will start to loosen, like a zipper coming undone inside your chest dot, and if you climb down into that ditch just once, just out of curiosity, don't bother coming back, because there's always a shovel waiting, and someone always needs to dig. Out on a strip of cracked blacktop between Kerrville and Mountain Home, past where the cell signal dies and the mesquites grow up wild along the fences, there's a patch of land folks just don't talk about anymore. Not unless they're drunk. Not unless the fire's low and the moon is high and nobody has anywhere to be the next morning. That's when stories come out like weeds from under the gravel. And one of the oldest, one that makes even the local ranchers go quiet and take a drink, is about the old lady rocking beside the burned car dot. It's not a ghost story the way you'd expect. There's no scream in the wind or flickering lights. It's quieter than that, more wrong. The kind of wrong you feel in your gut before your brain catches up. They say you can only see her if you're driving alone after midnight, preferably after a storm, when the air still smells like ozone and the ditches are running high with muddy water. She doesn't appear if you're with company. She doesn't need an audience. They call it the Bend. That's slow. Shallow curve off Ranch Road 1338 that hugs the dry wash and then dips into a sunken patch of cedar-choked scrub. Most days, it looks like nothing. Just more Texas back road, empty and ugly. But if you come around that bend at the wrong time, with the radio off and your eyes heavy from the road, you might notice something sitting off to the side just past. The rusted guardrail, a shape, a figure. Rocking dot, no one agrees on what color the sedan was originally. Some say red, others swear it was blue. Doesn't matter anymore, anyway. What's left of it is skeletal, sunken, and blackened with fire. Not the kind of damage that comes from weather or rust, but from something hot. Real hot. Windows melted into glass puddles, metal curled like dried fruit. No license plates, no tires, no engine. Just a shell, as if it had been scooped clean, and set down like a stage prop. And beside it, in a sagging wooden chair with half the paint flaked off, sits a woman. Not an old woman in the usual sense. There's nothing gentle or grandmotherly about her. The first thing you notice is her skin, or what's left of it. It clings to her bones like old wax, bubbled and half gone, stretched too thin in places and missing entirely in others. Her jaw is mostly bare. One eye socket gapes, hollow and dark, while the other holds something small and gray that might once have been an eye, but doesn't seem to move. Her nightgown is pale, maybe white or maybe just bleached by years in the sun, and it stuck to her in places like it melted there. Like she'd been in the car when it burned, then climbed out and sat down next to it and never left. But it's the motion that sticks with people. That slow, steady rocking. Forward, back, no creak. No sound of wood on gravel. Just the rhythmic movement, like she's waiting. Or listening. There are a few who say they stopped, that they couldn't help it. That something tugged at them. Some deep part of their brain that needed to see if she was real. Every one of those people tells a different story about what happened next, but all of them agree on one thing. She didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even turn her head. But her eye, the one still intact, followed them. And the rocking never once stopped. There's a guy named Rick who works at the feed store in town. Big guy, ex-Army. He told me he saw her once, 10 years back after closing up late. Thought it was just a weird statue at first. He pulled over and walked right up to her. Said the air got cold the closer he got. Not just chilly, but freezer. Cold. breath-fogging cold in the middle of August. He said he leaned in, trying to get a look at her face, and then he heard a sound like whispering. Except it wasn't coming from her. It was coming from the car. From the open windows, even though the interior was just black ash and melted metal. He doesn't talk about what it said, but he won't drive that road anymore. Takes a 2-hour detour just to avoid it. Then there was Julie Cardenas, a nurse at the clinic in Ingram. She told her sister she saw the woman rocking during a foggy drive home. She didn't stop, just slowed down a little, but she swore she saw the woman's arm move. Not a lot, just a twitch. Like she was about to raise her hand and wave. Julie hit the gas and didn't let up till she was in her driveway. That same night, her garage caught fire. Burned her car down to the rims. Fire marshal said it started from the inside out. No sign of tampering. No electrical fault. Just ignition from nowhere. But the one that gets me the most is from a tow truck driver named Mason. He told me this at a bar in Junction, nursing a whiskey and staring at the wall like it owed him money. He said he was out on a call, just past 2 in the morning, to pick up a car that broke down near the bend. But when he got there, the car was gone. No tire marks, no sign of a breakdown. Just the smell of something burned, faint but sharp, like melted plastic. And there she was, sitting beside the car that shouldn't be there. He said he locked eyes with her for half a second. Just half a second. And in that moment, he saw the flames. Not around her, inside her. Burning behind the bones like coals in a stove. He threw his truck into reverse and tore out of there, and for weeks afterward, he said he'd wake up with the smell of smoke in his nose and his skin itching like it. Was about to blister. There's no record of any crash at that spot. No accident reports, no missing persons. But everyone in town remembers the fire. Some say it was back in the 70s. A young woman just moved out here with her new husband. He was abusive. Controlling. They say one night he poured gasoline over the car with her in it and lit a match. But there's no proof, no names. Just the wreck and the woman and that ceaseless rocking beside the road. They say she's waiting for someone. Or maybe everyone. That the longer you look at her, the more likely you are to stop. And once you stop, it's only a matter of time before you see something in the flames. Something familiar. A face maybe, or a place. Something that shouldn't be burning, but is. People around here avoid that bend. They drive fast when they're near it. No music, no lights. Just silence and speed and a prayer that the chair is empty. But sometimes, late at night, if you're unlucky, you'll see her. And the chair will be rocking. Forward, back, waiting. It started showing up sometime in early June, right after school let out and the sun began baking the Texas highways into soft, shimmering mirages. Folks first saw it around exit 271 on I-45, just south of Corsicana, where the pines thinned out, and gave way to fields littered with rusting farm equipment and the occasional boarded-up gas station. At first, nobody paid it much attention. A mannequin on the shoulder of the interstate was strange, sure, but not unheard of. Pranksters, photographers, kids with too much time on their hands, people could come up with 100 reasons it might be there. It wore a tattered gray suit, like something pulled off a Goodwill clearance rack, and a wide-brimmed hat that cast its molded plastic face in shadow. No one could say exactly when it first appeared or who put it there. They only knew. It hadn't been there the day before. Roger McKinley was the first to talk about it on the radio. He worked for a local AM station out of Huntsville and hosted a late-night trucking show. A real character known for spinning yarns and poking fun at urban legends. He laughed when he first mentioned the mannequin. Said he'd driven past it. 6 nights in a row, and swore it moved a little closer to the road each time. He joked that it was getting ready to hitchhike. The calls came in slow at first. A few truckers said they'd seen it too. Then came the stories. One guy claimed it turned its head. Another said he stopped for a smoke break near that mile marker and found footprints in the gravel beside it. Not boot prints or tire marks, bare feet. The kind with toes, long and thin. Too long. The kind you didn't want to imagine belonged to anything that could walk upright. People laughed it off for a while. The local sheriff went out there and didn't find anything. Said maybe someone hauled it off or the wind knocked it over. No big deal. But then folks started reporting it again, only now it wasn't on the shoulder, it was farther up the road, near a rest stop. Sometimes it appeared closer to the tree line, sometimes right on the grass divider. No one ever saw it move. No one saw it being put there. It just showed up, always in that same posture, arms limp at its sides, chin tilted slightly down like it was watching its own feet. Cynthia Ames swore she hit it. Drove through a thunderstorm one night on her way back from Dallas and caught a glimpse of something standing in the breakdown lane. She veered too late and felt the thump under her tires. She pulled over, shaking, crying, already dialing 911. But when she got out, there was nothing. No body, no mannequin, no debris. Just water pouring off her car and the sound of the trees swaying. She never drove that stretch again. Then came Logan Worth, a quiet kid from Conroe who worked night shifts at a feed store. He'd drive I-45 twice a week to visit his girlfriend in Ferris. One night he texted her he'd be late, said traffic was backed up because someone had slammed into a roadside obstruction. He sent a picture from his car. Blurry, but clear enough. That same mannequin, face turned just slightly, its hat gone, head tilted like it was listening. The picture time-stamped 11:42 p.m. Logan never made it to Ferris. The cops found his car parked neatly on the shoulder with the engine still running and his phone on the passenger seat. The door was open, no signs of struggle, no blood. Just a set of footprints leading out into the field. Bare, long, the grass. Where they stopped was flattened like someone had laid down in it for hours. The mannequin was gone. By late July, word had spread. People started driving out just to see it. YouTube videos popped up. TikToks. Grainy shots of the mannequin under different lighting. Sometimes it looked newer, like the suit had been changed. Sometimes it looked older, like it had been burned or weathered. But it was always standing. Always alone. Always watching. Some of those videos got pulled. One from a guy named Trey Alston was taken down within minutes. Those who saw it before it vanished said it was different. Not shaky or low res. Clear, shot on a DSLR. You could see the detail in the eyes, the texture of the skin. But mannequins don't have pores. They don't have the fine veins behind. The eyeballs. And when Trey zoomed in, the lips moved. Not a lot. Just enough. Enough to form the words, "I see you." His account vanished. No one's heard from him since. Then came the wrecks. 5 in 3 weeks, all on the same stretch. All single-car incidents. All during the early morning hours, between 2 and 4 a.m. Every driver survived except one, a woman named Erica Holt. Her dash cam survived, too, and the footage made its way online for about 12 hours before it was flagged and removed. She was driving slow, talking to someone on her Bluetooth. The road was empty. You could see the mile markers flash past. Then she says, "What the hell is that?" And the car slows. The camera catches a figure standing just at the edge of the frame beside a green sign riddled with buckshot. The figure moves, not walks, moves like a frame skip. 1 second it's 10 feet away, then 6, then 2. The next shot is of Erica screaming, and the car swerves hard. The video cuts. When they found her, she was half inside the vehicle, half out, like she'd tried to crawl away but something had grabbed her mid-sentence. Her hands were shredded. Her face looked like she'd been staring at a blast furnace. People stopped joking after that. The sheriff set up cameras. Nothing ever caught. Local churches held vigils. Some said it was a spirit, a demon, a harbinger. Some said it was a government test, a psychological weapon being trialed on a rural population. But the truth was simpler and scarier. It didn't want to be understood. It wanted to be seen. I made the mistake of looking too long. It was August, and I was coming back from visiting my sister in the woodlands. The sun had gone down behind a wall of clouds, and the highway was empty. I wasn't tired, wasn't distracted. I just saw it standing there past a field of sunflowers, not 30 feet from the road. I thought it was a Halloween prank. I slowed down, I passed it. Then I looked in the mirror. It had turned. Not its body, just the head. And the face wasn't plastic, not anymore. It was the face of a man I'd never seen but felt like I'd always known. Pale, wet, eyes dark and deep like oil slicks. The mouth was open, a grin that wasn't for show. A grin full of teeth that didn't stop where they should have. My car sputtered. Then the engine cut. I coasted onto the shoulder, trying not to panic. I locked the doors. It was walking now. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel the rhythm of its steps in my bones. 1, 2. 1, 2. Every shadow in the car felt heavier. I tried the ignition. Nothing. I tried again. It caught. Headlights flashed. On. It was in front of me. I don't remember screaming, but my throat was raw the next day. I floored it. Drove with my high beams on for 60 miles without stopping. When I got home, there were handprints on my rear windshield. Bare. Long. Wet. I never drive I-45 anymore. Not at night. Not alone. I don't look in the mirrors unless I have to. And when I do, I pray I don't see a figure in a tattered gray suit standing just a little closer than it should be. Because it moves, not fast, not slow, just enough. Just enough to reach you when no one's watching. They were just standing there, right where the gravel shoulder met the grass along Highway 83. A row of children, maybe 10 or 12 of them, all barefoot and facing the open stretch of dark field. I only noticed them because I was driving slow. Real slow. I'd been on the road for hours, heading south past Zapata after visiting my brother in Laredo. I'd always hated driving at night through this part of Texas. Too much flat emptiness, too much nothing, and the kind of darkness. That starts to feel personal after a while. But that night I had no choice. My dog Hank was sick and I had to get him back home. He was sleeping on the passenger seat beside me, curled into the shape of a question mark, breathing shallow. The headlights swept over them, the kids. Didn't move, didn't flinch. They weren't looking at the road. Not a single one turned to face me. All just standing there, barefoot, arms at their sides, dirty legs and tattered clothes, some with matted hair, some so young they barely reached the waist of the taller ones. I slowed almost to a crawl as I passed, rolling down the window, thinking maybe this was some school group or migrants needing help. But there were no adults, no bags, no signs of a vehicle, and it was almost 1 in the morning. I eased to a stop. About 50 feet past them, shifted into park, and looked at them through the side mirror. Still standing. Still staring into that open black field like they were waiting for something to come crawling out of it. There was something wrong with how still they were. Kids fidget. They move, they look around. These didn't. They didn't even look at each other. Just the grass. Just the dark. I glanced at Hank. He was awake now, his ears twitching, eyes locked on the back seat like he'd heard something I hadn't. That made me hesitate. The idea of helping a group of stranded kids suddenly felt like it had been someone else's thought. I sat there, gripping the wheel with both hands, not even sure why I'd stopped. I'd seen strange things in South Texas before, sure, but this was different. It had a weight to it. Like I'd crossed into a story that wasn't meant to include me. Was about to shift into drive when something caught my eye in the rear view. There were only 9 kids now. I stared hard, counting again. One was gone. Not to the right, not to the left. Not walking down the road, just not there anymore. The space between the 2 smallest girls was wider now. I looked around. There was no sound, no movement, no indication that any of them had stepped away or moved an inch. I checked the side mirror. The others were still standing like statues. And then Hank growled. It was low and unsure, like he was trying to make up his mind between warning me and hiding under the seat. I followed his eyes. There was something in the back seat. At first it looked like a shadow, a dark silhouette pressed into the corner behind my seat, nearly invisible except for the outline against the dim glow from the dash. I turned fully and stared, breath caught in my throat. It was a child, a boy, thin, silent, barefoot, dressed in clothes that looked decades old. His skin was pale in a way that felt more like the absence of light than a natural complexion. He was watching Hank, just sitting there, knees pulled up, head tilted, watching. I opened my door and nearly stumbled out of the truck. What the hell was happening? The night air was humid and dead still. No wind, no cars. No sounds but my own footsteps crunching over the gravel as I circled to the passenger side and flung the back door open. Empty. The seat was bare. Nothing there. No sign a kid had ever been inside. Hank barked and scrambled into my lap, whimpering. I turned back toward the road. The children were gone. Every single one of them. The shoulder was empty. The grass undisturbed. No footprints. No rustling in the tall weeds. Just a long stretch of Highway 83 curving into the dark like it always had. I didn't waste another second. I got back in, slammed the door, and peeled out so hard gravel kicked up behind me. Hank didn't calm down for miles, and neither did I. I kept checking the mirror like an idiot, half expecting to see that pale face again. But it didn't show up. Not that night. Not until the next. Because I couldn't leave it alone. I know how that sounds. People say, if that ever happened to me, I'd never go back. But they're lying. You see something that's wrong, it gets into your head. You start thinking maybe it was a dream, a trick of the dark, and you want to prove it. You want something rational. You want the world to make sense again. So the next night, I drove the same route. Same hour, same weather, same everything. I drove slower this time, trying to anticipate the spot. And I found them. They were back, all 10 this time, lined up the same way, barefoot, silent, staring into the same stretch of field like they were watching for something. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I kept driving, but this time I counted before I passed. 9. I counted 9. And as soon as the 10th space passed my door, I felt it, a shift in the air. Like pressure suddenly changed inside the truck. Hank barked behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't have to. I looked in the mirror and saw him again. The same boy. In the same seat, staring straight ahead, not at me. Not at Hank. But at the road in front of us. Like he knew where we were going. This time I didn't stop. I drove all the way home, got inside, locked the door, and sat in the kitchen until sunrise. I didn't see him disappear. I just knew by morning he was gone. The house felt normal again. Hank was calm again. And I thought maybe that was it. But that wasn't it. Because 2 days later, I read a post in a local Facebook group. Some woman in Rio Grande City. She said she'd been driving back from Eagle Pass with her teenage son when they saw something strange, A row of kids standing on the side of Highway 83, barefoot, silent, staring into a field. They pulled over to help. When they turned back, one of the children was missing, and she said her son swore someone was sitting behind him on the way home, even though the back seat was empty. She laughed it off at first until she saw small wet footprints on the floor mat in the morning. I didn't comment, didn't message her, but I started looking. Really looking. There were other posts, other stories. Most got buried, deleted, laughed at. But if you knew what to look for, missing time, strange footprints, dogs acting strange, kids lined up where no kids should be, you'd find them. From Carrizo Springs to Roma, Zapata to Harlingen. Always on 83. Always at night. Always 10 of them. And always. One disappears. And one reappears where they don't. Belong. Sometimes in your car. Sometimes in your house. Sometimes standing at the foot of your bed, barefoot and silent, just watching the wall. I don't drive that road anymore. Haven't for a year, but I still count children when I pass playgrounds, and I always check my back seat. You ever stop at those little two-pump gas stations on long stretches of nothing? The kind that's got a flickering sign, a dust-coated ice freezer, and a bathroom key chained to a hunk of wood so big you'd think it was for a jailhouse? There's one like that off Highway 190, just outside of Livingston, Texas. Folks say it doesn't even show up on GPS anymore, like the satellites gave up trying to track it. I passed it a few times heading east toward Jasper, usually didn't stop, not unless I was running low. But that night, God help me, I was on E, and the next town was 20 miles out. So I pulled in. It was just past 1 in the morning. The station was lit up barely by a single buzzing overhead lamp and the dying glow of a Pepsi machine whose logo looked like it hadn't been updated since Clinton was in office. The air was thick with pine scent and something faintly metallic, like old pennies rubbed between wet fingers. I coasted in slow, headlights sweeping over cracked pavement and weeds that had forced their way up through the concrete like they were reclaiming the place. Then, I saw him, standing just past the sign that read Clearview Gas, right where the lot curved around into the pumps. Was a man wearing a red vest with a white shirt underneath, black pants, and shiny shoes that didn't match the dust and gravel at all. He waved at me, friendly-like, wide smile. Too wide, actually. That was the first thing that should have set something off, but I was tired, hungry, and desperate to piss. He pointed at pump 4. I looked at the sign on it. Out of order. Laminated sheet, yellowed and curling with age, zip-tied to the handle. But he nodded, like I should use it anyway. I hesitated. Then he gave me that same warm, exaggerated smile and mimed pumping gas. Something about how stiff his movement was made my stomach churn, like he was acting out what a human might do, but didn't quite understand how arms and shoulders should work. I rolled down the window halfway and called out, "You sure this one works?" He just nodded again and pointed. Against better judgment, what little I had left that night, I pulled up. The nozzle came free easier than I expected, and when I pressed the lever, the numbers actually clicked to life. The fuel gauge started to rise. I watched it with a kind of uneasy relief, until I glanced up and saw the greeter was gone. I figured. He must have gone inside the station. I walked up to the storefront to pay in cash. The glass door was smeared with the kind of grease you only get from years of bug guts and nicotine-coated fingerprints. Inside, it was brighter than I expected. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. Rows of snacks with old branding, sun chips in bags I hadn't seen since high school. A couple refrigerators buzzed in the back, filled with faded beer labels and glass-bottled sodas. Everything felt wrong. Too clean in some parts, too dusty in others. Time didn't feel consistent here. Behind the counter sat a woman with gray curls and a name tag that said Rhonda. She looked up over her bifocals like I just wandered into her living room without knocking. "You pumping?" she asked, voice flat. "Yeah, pump 4, I said. She blinked. "Pump 4's been shut off since the accident. Ain't worked since '97. I looked at her for a second, thinking maybe she was joking, or maybe there'd been a mix-up. Some guy out front told me to use it. Red vest, white shirt, about 6 feet tall, waved me in. She stared at me, her eyes suddenly less bored, more searching. "That a joke, son?" "No. Why?" Rhonda stood up slow, bones creaking, and came around the counter. She moved toward the front door and squinted through the glass like she was checking for something. Her lips pressed into a thin, colorless line. "You see what direction he went?" "No. He was there when I pulled in, gone by the time I walked inside." She nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something she'd already suspected. "Well," she said, voice lower now, "you got your gas. I'd go on and be gone." "Wait, what was the accident?" She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "Back. In '97, fellow named Eddie worked the night shift here. Always waved to folks. Kinda made the place feel safe, you know? One night, storm hit. Lightning took out the breakers. A pickup skidded off 190, slammed right into pump 4. Caught fire. Eddie was out there, waving at the guy to slow down, they say. Got pinned between the pump and the truck. Burned. Whole pump melted down. Fire chief said they couldn't even tell which body parts belonged to who. My hands felt ice cold. You're saying that guy I saw wasn't no guy, she said, then paused. Or maybe it used to be. We get reports once in a while. People see someone waving. Always pump 4. Always gone by the time they get to the counter. I tried to laugh, but it caught in my throat. I turned around, glanced out the window, and for a split second, just when I saw him again. Same vest, same posture. Standing at the edge of the pump island, his smile gone now. His face pale and mottled, as if the skin had been burned and grown back wrong. One of his hands was raised, not to wave, but to point. Directly at me. Then he was gone. I didn't buy snacks. Didn't use the bathroom. Didn't even say goodbye to Rhonda. I walked out, got in the car, and drove. I didn't look in the mirrors. Not for miles, but the creepiest part didn't hit me until I pulled into the motel an hour later. I popped the gas cap to check it, just to see how full it was. The handle of the pump was still in there, burnt, twisted, like it had melted into the shape of my car's fuel intake. The metal branding on the side read Clearview 4. I left it in the parking lot and never went back. Let the rental company figure it out. They called a week later asking why the car wouldn't start, why there was no trace of a fuel system at all. Said it looked like the tank had melted into the frame. I didn't answer. I don't drive that road anymore. And when I pass other stations like that, I don't stop. Not even when I'm running on fumes. Not even when someone smiles and waves. Especially not then. I was driving west on I-40, cutting across the northern tip of Texas as the sun was dipping behind the clouds in that hazy yellow-pink way it does in the Panhandle. The kind of sky that makes you squint even when the light's not bright, like it's been smeared with dust and smoke. I'd left Shamrock late after a job fell through, some busted HVAC unit at a gas station that turned out to be just a flipped breaker. And now I was trying to get to Tucumcari before nightfall. The highway was quiet, except for the occasional 18-wheeler that screamed past like a charging beast, its wake rocking my truck a little each time. Around 30 miles east of Amarillo, just past the exit for Conway, the terrain flattens out hard. Nothing but wheat fields, empty fence posts, and the occasional weathered barn caving in on itself like an old man with no spine. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, just a tall, dark shape standing in a fallow field, surrounded by waist-high grass gone brittle from heat. At first, I thought it was one of those handmade scarecrows, the kind with a sack for a head and a plaid shirt flapping in the wind. Only this one wasn't moving. At all. That wasn't what made me lift my foot off the gas. What made me do that was how it seemed to be facing the road. Not just generally pointed toward the highway, but lined up exactly with where I was. It wasn't looking down or to the side. It was looking straight at me. I slowed to about 40, letting a rusted pickup roar past, its driver not giving the field so much as a glance. I kept my hands tight on the wheel and tried to dismiss the oddness. I'd seen weird stuff on the road before, drunks stumbling out of bars, cows that wandered too close to fences, even a naked man sitting cross-legged in the median near Lubbock once. But this was different. This thing had weight to it. Not in mass, but in presence. Like it had waited a long time for someone to notice it. I sped back up and kept my eyes forward. But curiosity's a powerful thing. About a half-mile down, I gave in and glanced back in the side mirror. It had moved. It was closer to the road now. Not by much, maybe 10 or 12 feet, but enough that I knew it hadn't just been a trick of the light. It was no scarecrow. It was too white. Not the fabric or the shape, but the actual thing itself, pale as chalk. It stood too straight, too rigid, and its arms were too long, hanging down nearly to its knees, fingers stiff like rods. I kept driving. My chest felt tight, like I was holding in a breath I didn't know I'd taken. I turned on the radio to fill the silence, but the static buzzed so loud it rattled the speakers, and I shut it off again almost instantly. When I finally reached the outskirts of Amarillo, I pulled into a truck stop to fill up. As I stood there watching the numbers roll on the pump, I asked the guy at the next stall if he'd ever seen something weird back toward Conway. He raised his eyebrows. Weird how? I shrugged. Just like something standing in the fields. He chewed his lip, then shook his head. Not really. But you know, the old fields out that way used to belong to a guy named Jeb Alms. Whole family went missing in the 60s. Just gone. House got torn down sometime in the 90s. Nobody wanted the land. I asked him what happened, but he just shrugged again and went inside. That night, I got a motel room just off Georgia Street. The kind of place where the front desk clerk doesn't ask for ID if you wave a 20. The AC clanged like it had a metal spoon caught in the fan, but I didn't care. I just wanted sleep, except I didn't sleep. Not much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, standing in that field, watching, waiting. The next morning, I told myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Just exhaustion and a mind dulled by too many long nights on the road. But something about the image stuck like a splinter in my thoughts. That pale, unmoving figure and the way it turned its head, not smoothly like a person, but in this twitchy, jerking motion like an owl having a seizure. I needed to see it again. It wasn't rational, but it was real. I knew it. And some things don't let go until you look at them dead on. So I drove back. Took the exit just before Conway and looped around through one of the old access roads. Found a place to pull over near where I thought I'd seen it. I parked, got out, and climbed the low fence, the barbed wire broken in a few spots like it had been trampled by deer. The field stretched out wide and flat, the dead grass crunching beneath my boots. Wind tugged at my sleeves, and the air smelled faintly of old oil and something faintly sweet, like rotting fruit. I walked for maybe 300 yards. Then I saw it. It hadn't moved from the night before. Still standing perfectly straight. Its skin, or what passed for it, blindingly pale in the daylight. It wasn't wearing clothes. Its body looked like wax left too long in the sun, sagging in odd places but somehow retaining a rough human shape. Its face was. Featureless at first, just a smooth plane like molded plastic. But as I stepped closer, something shifted. I swear to you it blinked, not with eyelids. The flesh just folded in, like a dimple swallowing itself, and then it moved. Its head turned a full 180 degrees with a series of dry, clicking pops. First, left, then right, then back to center, locking onto me. Its shoulders didn't follow, just the neck. I took a step back. It took one forward. I turned and ran. The grass felt thicker than before, clinging to my legs. The wind screamed through my ears. I didn't look back until I reached the fence, slicing my palm open as I vaulted over. When I did, it had stopped. It stood just before the edge of the field, watching, head still tilted, waiting. I drove back to Amarillo, blood drying on my hand and heart thudding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to tell someone, a cop, a priest, a news station, but I didn't. I couldn't. What would I say? That a thing pretending to be a scarecrow had turned its head inside out and chased me across a field? I booked another night at the same motel and locked every bolt on the door. Slept with the light on. Still had the dream again, only this time I wasn't in the field. I was standing on the side of the highway, watching myself drive past. My reflection in the side mirror didn't move the way it should have. It turned to face the field. And the thing inside the field raised its arm to wave. In the days that followed, I told myself not to go back. But I keep finding excuses to stay. In Amarillo, keep taking jobs that stretch longer than they should. I've started leaving my motel window open a crack at night, just in case I hear something out there. A creak, a rustle in the tall grass, a jerk of motion at the edge of the dark. Sometimes, when I pass other fields, I see similar shapes standing. Perfectly still, pale things far too pale for the Texas sun. And every time, without fail, they're facing me. Following. Waiting. It started with a rumor, like most things in small towns do. People passing it around at gas pumps, barber shops, the aisles of Dollar General. Something about a priest out on FM 666, a road that cuts through the dry ribs of South Texas, like a cracked scar curling past abandoned farms, rusting oil equipment, and stretches of nothing but mesquite and barbed wire. They said he wore black robes, the old kind, stiff with dust and sweat, and that he carried a wooden cross the size of a fence post. He didn't wave for help, didn't flag you down. He'd just be there, stepping out from the brush along the shoulder like he'd been waiting for you all along. They said he mouthed prayers you couldn't quite hear, and if you rolled down your window or slowed to listen, he'd finish his benediction with a sign of the cross in the air. Some folks called it a blessing, said it saved their lives. But others said if you let him finish the ritual, your brakes would fail the next time you really needed them. It was the kind of story kids dared each other to test. A late-night drive on FM 666 with the windows down, hoping to catch sight of the priest in the brush. Most never saw anything but dust and jackrabbits. A few said they did see him, always between mile marker 43 and 45, near the bend that used to be the entrance to a collapsed bridge that went nowhere. One boy swore the priest touched the hood of his Chevy and whispered in Latin. He crashed a week later on a dry road with no signs of skidding. His sister said the tires were new. His mother still won't speak about it. I heard the story 100 times growing up in Fremont. I didn't believe it. I worked dispatch at the sheriff's substation for a few years, then ended up in oilfield maintenance, and now I deliver parts all over the southern counties. I've been up and down FM 666 more times than I can count. Usually alone, usually. Past sundown, never saw a priest. Never thought I would, but last month, on a drive back from Sandia, hauling a new belt drive in the back of my pickup, I saw him. Clear as day, just past mile marker 44, he was standing dead still in the mesquite shadows, right where the land dips a little before the old cattle fence that used to keep stray steers from wandering onto the road. He was tall and pale, sunken. Eyes, lips moving like he was reciting scripture from some invisible book, and he had that cross. Thick, dark wood, like it had been carved from the pew of an ancient church. He held it upright with both hands, like it was anchoring him to the spot. I slowed down out of instinct. That's the part that still bothers me. I didn't want to. I just did. My foot came off the gas like it knew something I didn't. He stepped. Closer to the shoulder, not frantic or urgent, just slow and sure, his robe dragging across gravel and dead leaves. His mouth never stopped moving. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it wasn't English. The syllables were wet and guttural, like something chewed instead of spoken. When I reached him, I stopped completely. My hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles white. I didn't think to roll down the window. Didn't speak. I just stared as he lifted one hand from the cross, palm raised, and began making a slow sign in the air, tracing it from my hood to the windshield. His lips moved faster. He blinked once, then again, too slow, like each blink was painful. I felt a pressure in my ears, a ringing under my skull like altitude sickness. Something in me screamed to go. I don't know why, but I floored it. Kicked. Up a spray of dust and shot down the road. I didn't look back. The next few days were normal. I told myself it was a trick of the light. Maybe a drunk. Maybe some old-timer playing a prank. But the image wouldn't leave. That pale, sunken face. The cross too long to be real. The prayers that felt like they were crawling into my brain, even though I hadn't heard a word. Then, 3 days later, I was headed north on 281 when a deer jumped the ditch. I slammed the brakes hard. Nothing. The pedal sank straight to the floor like it had no resistance. No screech. No slow down. Just glide. I missed the deer by maybe 3 inches and plowed into a barbed wire fence. The airbags didn't go off. My head bounced off the steering wheel and I blacked out for a few seconds. Woke up with blood in my mouth and the distant hum of flies. The whole cab smelled like hot iron and old pennies. The mechanic said the brake line had ruptured. Said it didn't make sense because the line was new. No corrosion, no tear, just split clean like it had been snipped with shears. When I asked him to look again, he shrugged and said maybe it was a manufacturing defect. I didn't argue. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the whispering. Not in my ears, but behind them, like a second heartbeat. I dug through old forum threads and message boards. Turns out there were others. Scattered across different towns, all in the FM 666 corridor. One man said he saw the priest in 1983 and swore it was the same face. Another woman claimed her father used to be a missionary, and he recognized the prayers as a corrupted form of Latin. Something close to exorcism rites, but backward. Inverted, not a blessing. A summoning, there's a theory, shared on a blog that hasn't been updated since 2009, that the priest was real once. A missionary sent to the area in the 1800s. He tried to build a chapel in the desert and was found hanging from his own cross. Eyes pecked out, tongue chewed off. Locals buried him under the chapel floor. The chapel burned a year later, and the land's been barren ever since. The road runs right through the spot now. Mile 44, just where I saw him. I didn't go to work. The next day, I drove back to FM 666 instead. I had to know. I needed to see if he was still there, if it had all been some kind of sunstroke hallucination. I drove slow, window down, cross dangling from my rearview mirror. I passed mile 43, then 44. Nothing. I parked by the cattle fence and got out. The air felt too still. Not quiet, but heavy. The way a room feels right after someone leaves, but their scent still lingers. The brush was dense, but I stepped in anyway. I didn't see him. Not at first. I just heard something moving farther in, the soft rustle of cloth against leaves. When I called out, the sound stopped. Then I heard the whispering again, louder this time, like it was being whispered directly into the bones of my skull. I turned to run and saw him crouched behind a mesquite stump, head tilted too far to the side, his cross jammed into the dirt like a grave marker. His hands were bleeding. No wound, just steady dripping from the fingertips. He smiled, and his lips didn't move, but I heard the prayer in my head, perfectly clear. He was finishing it. The part I didn't let him complete last time. I didn't drive home. I stumbled. Tripped over rocks, tore my jeans. Scraped my palms. Open. When I finally reached my truck, I didn't stop to close the door. I just started the engine and peeled away, fishtailing through the gravel. The brakes were working again. That was the worst part. Perfectly fine. Like he'd given them back. That was a week ago. Since then, 2 people in town have died and brake-related accidents. One of them was a high school teacher. The other was a kid I used to coach in Little League. I checked the accident reports. Both were near mile 44. Both cars had no skid marks. And last night I heard whispering under my floorboards. I checked the crawl space. Nothing. No rats. No pipes. Just dirt and silence. But when I came back upstairs, there was a single bloody fingerprint on my driver's license. It wasn't mine. It starts with the shoes. White Nikes, the kind with the red swoosh and thick soles that made a distinct scuff when dragged on asphalt. I first noticed him late one evening in late October, just past mile marker 201 on the southbound side of Highway 16. I was heading home from work in Kerrville, the sun long gone and the air already carrying that sharp hill country chill. My headlights swept across the road shoulder, and there he was. Head down, hands in the pockets of a faded green varsity jacket. Not hitchhiking, not looking for help, just walking. Steady, determined, almost like he had somewhere to be. I thought he might have been a kid from one of the ranch houses dotted along that stretch. Maybe out too late, missed his ride. His jeans were dusty and ripped at the knees, and he moved like he'd been walking for a long time. I slowed a little, thought about pulling over, but something in me said no. Not fear exactly, just unease. Like when you walk past a mannequin that looks too real, and you catch yourself glancing back to see if it moved. The next night, he was there again. Same spot, mile marker 201. Same slouched gait, same jacket, same Nikes. I passed him just after 9 p.m., and this time I watched in my rearview mirror. He didn't look back. Didn't react at all. I mentioned it to my wife when I got home. She told me not to worry, probably just a troubled kid, maybe high or wandering. Still, I couldn't shake it. The third time was different. It was raining that evening. A real hill country downpour. Thunder rolling low over the horizon like distant drums, wind bending the trees sideways. I hit the wipers as I rounded the bend near the marker, and there he was. Soaked through, hair clinging to his face, jacket darker from the water, sagging off his shoulders like a second skin, but still walking. Still not flagging anyone down. Still not looking at anything but the blacktop ahead. I rolled past him, slower this time. I turned down the radio. I wanted to hear something, footsteps maybe, or the way his shoes slapped the wet road, but it was just rain and the rhythmic creak of the wipers. In my mirror, I thought I saw his head turn just slightly toward me. I told myself I imagined it. Curiosity got the better of me. That weekend I asked around. Clerk at the gas station in Bandera said he'd seen the kid too. Called him the Walker. Said locals had been spotting him for years, always near mile marker 201. Always wearing the same clothes. No one ever got a good look at his face. If they really stopped, tried to talk to him, he'd vanish before they could get a word out. I laughed it off. Sounded like one of those roadside ghost stories teens tell to scare each other. But something about it stuck with me. I started taking that route every evening just to see if he'd be there. And most nights, he was. Always walking, always alone. Some nights he looked fresh, jacket zipped, face clean beneath his dark mop of hair. Other nights he looked worn. Pale, with eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in years. The worst was when he looked wet, like he'd just climbed out of a river. About a month into this, I pulled over. I had to. He was right at the edge of the road, and the sky was clear for once, moonlight making his jacket glow faintly green. I put the hazards on and rolled down my window. "Hey," I called out, "you okay? Need a ride?" He didn't break stride. Just kept walking. I put the car in park and got out. My boots crunched on the gravel shoulder as I stepped toward him. "Where you headed?" He stopped. For the first time in all the nights I'd seen him, he actually stopped. I froze. He turned, just enough for the moonlight to hit half his face. It wasn't right. I don't mean it was grotesque or disfigured. It just didn't match what I expected. Like seeing your reflection blink a second too late. His skin looked rubbery. His mouth didn't open, but I heard something, felt it more than heard it. A breath in the air, like a whisper not meant for ears. I couldn't make out the words, but it chilled me right through. Then he turned and walked straight past me down the road again, like I wasn't even there. I didn't follow. I got in the car and drove home, hands shaking, heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I told myself I'd imagined it, the way he looked, the sound. But I stopped taking that road after that. Didn't matter. 2 nights later, he was walking down my street, that same gate, same jacket, same scuffed Nikes. My wife saw him through the kitchen window and called for me. He was out past the tree line, walking the edge of the property. Never looked at the house. Just followed the road until he faded into the night. I checked the mile markers the next day. We lived 23 miles from that spot. I didn't sleep well after that. Then the dreams started, always the same. I'm walking behind him, always behind, I never catch up. His footsteps are slow but steady, and the road stretches on endlessly through a moonlit plain. I call out, but no sound comes from my throat. Sometimes he turns around and I wake up before I see his face. Other times he stops and points at something behind me, and I wake up covered in sweat. A week ago, the sheriff came by, asked if I'd heard anything unusual. A couple had gone missing. Their truck was found abandoned near mile marker 201, lights still on, doors locked from the inside. No blood, no sign of struggle, just gone. Like they stepped out and disappeared. I said nothing. Last night, I went back. I don't know why. Maybe to see if it was real. Maybe to end the dreams. I left just after sunset, drove slowly with the windows down. The air was thick and still. No crickets, no wind. I stopped just shy of the marker, left the engine running, and waited. He came around the bend like always. But this time, he looked different, slower, stiffer. His jacket hung in tatters, and his jeans were torn clean through the thighs. One sneaker had melted at the sole, his foot bare and blackened. His skin looked gray, almost waxy. And where his face should have been, there was something like a smear, like it had been rubbed away. He passed my car without pausing. I turned off the engine and followed on foot. I didn't plan to. My legs just moved. I fell into step behind him, maybe 20 yards back, trying to make sense of what I was doing. The road stretched on, each step taking me farther from the car, farther from the lights. He never looked back. I don't remember how long I followed. Time didn't make sense. I just know I blinked, and suddenly, I was alone. No sound. No wind. Just the black road and the moon overhead. I turned to go back. But there was no car, no marker. Just the road stretching behind me, same as ahead. I walked for what felt like hours, until my legs gave out and I sat down on the shoulder. That's where I am now. I've walked every direction I can, but I always end up back here, same spot, same marker dot, and tonight I saw headlights. Someone else is coming. If you're reading this, don't stop. Don't slow down. Don't look him in the eye, because every time someone notices him, he gets a little closer to getting out, and someone else takes his place. They say there's a stretch of old farm road west of Laredo where the brush gets so thick it looks like it's swallowing the fence lines. It's not on any major route, not unless you're the kind of person who takes wrong turns on purpose. Maybe you're tired of the interstate, tired of the gas station chains and soulless fast food, and you want to feel something again. You want dust on your windshield, mesquite smoke drifting in from nowhere, maybe a dog chasing your tires for a few yards before vanishing. But out there, around mile marker 81 on that cracked two-lane road, there's a thing that looks like a dog but isn't one. Not really. The first time I saw it, I was headed back from a job in Eagle Pass, riding alone in my work truck. I haul irrigation equipment, parts mostly, and there's no shortage of that kind of work in South Texas. I was supposed to take 83 all the way up, but I cut across early through a sliver of forgotten land between ranches. The sun had already dropped, but the sky still held that sticky orange glow you only get right before true dark sets in. The kind that makes shadows stretch too long and brush flicker like it's alive. I saw it crouched by the side of the road, just where the gravel shoulder met the brush line. Looked like a mutt at first, mangy, low to the ground, ears pinned back. Its head was tilted, like it was listening real close. I slowed down, mostly out of habit, thinking maybe I just startled it. It didn't flinch, didn't run. Then, it smiled. I don't mean it curled its lips the way dogs sometimes do when they're nervous. I mean it smiled. Full teeth. Broad and slow, like it knew something about me. Something personal. The worst part wasn't even the smile. It was the eyes. They weren't dog eyes. They were too round, too wet. They looked human. I passed it. And for a second, I thought that was it. Just one of those weird moments you file away and maybe laugh about later over a beer. But then it barked out, except it didn't sound like a barked out. It was clipped, strained, like someone trying to force a word through broken vocal cords. I didn't understand it at first. Just a garbled yelp with weight behind it. But then, clear as day the second time, it sounded like my name. Tom? I didn't slam the brakes. I didn't even slow down. I just kept going, eyes forward, hands locked tight on the wheel. My brain was screaming, trying to sort it out, to reason through it. Dogs can mimic sounds, sure, parrots do it all the time. But that wasn't mimicry. That was directed, intentional. I didn't talk about it for weeks. Thought maybe I'd imagined it. But the feeling stuck with me. This oily sense that I'd been noticed by something that shouldn't have been there. Something that remembered me. It wasn't until I ran into Junior down at the shop that I mentioned it. He was swapping out a fuel line and cussing like always when I brought it up. Told him I saw something strange off the bypass near Laredo. His hand stopped moving. He didn't look up right away, just said, "Did it grin at you?" That's when I knew. Turns out I wasn't the only one. Junior said his cousin Luis saw it too. Saw it out by the same stretch of road one night last summer when he pulled over to take a leak. Said the thing sat real still, right at the edge of the mesquite, grinning so wide you could see the pink of its gums. Said it barked once, low and choppy, and it sounded like someone whispering his sister's name. It's not just the smile or the way it speaks. It's the way it watches, like it's waiting for something. Not food, not a ride. Something worse. About 2 months after my first sighting, I got a call from a local rancher named Ezra, old man who ran cattle east of the Rio Bravo, he said. One of his hands went missing, a young guy named Ronnie, who'd been driving fence along the old trail that loops past that same road. They found the truck idling in the dark, door wide open. No blood, no struggle. Just a perfect set of dog prints circling the vehicle. But the tracks weren't right. Too deep in places, like whatever left them was walking wrong. Off balance. And mixed in the dirt, like it had followed itself around the truck a few times, were handprints. Human ones. Bare and pressed deep like someone had been crawling. I started digging. Talking to other drivers, farmers, night shift workers, anyone who passed through that stretch. Over time, the stories lined up. People seeing a dog with a too-wide smile, glassy human eyes, a mouth that sounded like a radio stuck between stations. Some heard names. Others swore it laughed. One woman, a schoolteacher from Zapata, said she saw it out by her back gate. She thought it was just a stray until it stood up. Not on 2 legs, not quite, but upright enough that her porch light hit its face full on. She said it grinned so hard the skin on its cheeks split and its eyes rolled white. Said she couldn't move for 10 minutes after. She moved north to San Antonio 3 days later. Never came back. I've seen it twice since that first time. Once near dusk and once after midnight, always near the same stretch. Always alone. It doesn't chase. Doesn't attack. It just watches, smiles, and speaks. The second time it said my daughter's name, I hadn't told anyone about that. Not my wife, not my folks. We lost Emily when she was 3 years ago, accident in the backyard pool. It was our private pain, something I still carry like a knife in the chest. But the thing knew. That's what makes it evil, I think. Not that it looks wrong or sounds wrong, but that it remembers. It digs. I stopped taking that road. Even if it adds another hour to the haul, I don't care. But I still hear about it sometimes. Junior says it's been seen further out now. Closer to the newer developments. Closer to the city limits. And every so often, someone says they heard it bark. And it sounded like their own name. If you ever drive west of Laredo, after dark and see a dog sitting too still by the roadside, one with a human grin that stretches, too wide and eyes that look like they've seen your entire life, do not stop. Don't slow down. Don't make eye contact, because once it knows your name, it never forgets. It was just after midnight when Travis Gentry first saw the soldier. He was driving east along Route 90, just past the outskirts of Brackettville, Texas, a stretch of highway that never saw much life after sundown. His F-150 was loaded with tools and parts for a ranch repair job scheduled the next day in Uvalde. The radio was off, and the only sound in the cab was the soft hum of tires against the asphalt and the faint rattle of his glove compartment every time the truck hit a bump. The moon was low and heavy, casting long shadows over the mesquite trees and wire fences, and the air outside was beginning to feel like fall crisp, but not yet cold. Then Travis saw the figure on the shoulder just beyond mile marker 221. A man in uniform stood stiffly at attention, one hand raised halfway in a lazy salute. His back was ramrod straight, his posture rigid like something out of an old movie, the way soldiers used to stand before the world softened around the edges. His uniform was immaculate, deep olive green, with creases sharp enough to cut. His boots, on the other hand, were scuffed and dust-caked like he'd walked across miles of dirt road just to get there. Travis slowed instinctively. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way the man looked, not threatening, just misplaced. Out of time, like someone who'd wandered off a film set and gotten lost in the present. He pulled over and leaned across the cab to crank the passenger window down. "You all right, buddy?" He called out. The soldier stepped forward. His face was clean-shaven and young, no older than 20, maybe, but there was something about his eyes that gave Travis pause. They were a shade too dark, hollow around the edges like he hadn't slept in days. He wasn't sweating, despite the jacket and long pants, and when he smiled, it was small, restrained, formal. "You headed east?" the soldier asked, voice flat but polite. "Uvalde," Travis nodded. "Hop in. I can take you as far as there." The man didn't hesitate. He opened the door, climbed into the passenger seat, and shut it gently behind him. Travis noticed the temperature drop the moment he did. Not sharply, not enough to raise alarm, but enough for him to instinctively twist the AC knob to low, even though it was already off. The soldier sat with his hands on his knees, posture stiff, gaze forward. After a few silent minutes, Travis glanced over. "Where are you headed?" The soldier paused, then turned his head slightly. "Camp Sulphur," he said. Travis blinked. "Don't think I've heard of that one. It's an old base." "Been closed for a long time," the soldier replied, voice barely above a whisper. "They shut it down in '72, but I never made it back." The tone of that last sentence twisted in Travis's stomach. He looked back at the road and gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. "You got a name?" "Private First Class James McCready." The way he said it, the cadence, the rhythm, sounded rehearsed, like he was reciting it from memory. "You from around here, James?" The soldier nodded slowly. "Used to be. Before the war." "What war?" "There was another." Pause longer this time. Then James looked at him and said, "Vietnam." Travis swallowed hard. That didn't make any sense. The kid didn't look older than 20. Couldn't have been born before 2000. And yet there was something in the way he said it, not a joke, not a lie, just fact. Travis didn't know what to say, so he drove. The silence between them thickened. The truck's headlights caught the edge of a road sign. "Uvalde, 37 miles. I died near the base," James said suddenly. "March 28, 1971. Convoy ambush. Took a round to the side of the neck. Didn't feel like dying, but I did it anyway. They flew my body back, buried me in a plot with no marker. Mama couldn't afford one. Daddy drank too much to care." Travis's throat tightened. He glanced at the soldier, expecting some kind of punchline. There was none. James just stared straight ahead, unmoving. "They forgot me," the soldier said quietly. Travis felt cold sweat trickle down the back of his neck. "I don't mean to scare you," James added, almost apologetically. "I don't hitch often. Just when I get restless. Just when it gets loud again." "Loud?" "In my head, the jungle sounds, screaming, gunfire. I wake up and it's like I'm back in it. But there's nothing. Just dirt and silence." Travis felt something shift. In the air. The truck felt heavier, like the cab was pressing inward, like the road itself was stretching longer. He checked the clock. 12:41 a.m. It had been 12:41 10 minutes ago. The radio crackled. He hadn't touched it. The radio stayed off, but a low whisper came through, not static, but a voice. A whisper, urgent and garbled, like it was underwater. Travis reached for the dial. The whisper stopped. When he looked back at James, the soldier was watching him now. "They don't see me anymore," James said. "Who doesn't?" "Anyone. They drive by. No one stops. You did. I think maybe you're supposed to." Travis didn't answer. He couldn't. You believe in ghosts? James asked, his tone calm, like he was asking about the weather. I didn't. Used to. James smiled again. It was a sad smile. A knowing one. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. I just need to get back. Even if there's no one left. Even if it's all rust and weeds. Travis nodded, not because he understood, but because he didn't know what else to do. He kept driving. The highway rolled out in front of them like an old film reel, frame by frame, and the night pressed in from both sides. When the sign for Uvalde finally appeared, James sat up straighter. Drop me off by the bridge, he said. Travis obeyed. He pulled over near the old concrete bridge where the Frio River crossed under the road. James opened the door and stepped out. The cold went with him. Before he closed the door, he leaned back in and looked Travis in the eye. They forgot me, he said. Don't you? Then he shut the door and walked into the dark, the silhouette of his uniform vanishing into the brush like smoke in the wind. Travis sat there for a long time, hands on the wheel, heart-pounding when he finally made it to the job site the next morning. He asked the landowner if he'd ever heard of a soldier named James McCready. The man paused, scratched his beard, and nodded. Yeah, McCready boy. Died in 71. Was supposed to be buried out east, but they say his body got misplaced for weeks. Finally came back, but the coffin was empty. Mama swore they gave her the wrong one. She had a breakdown. Died not long after. That night, Travis looked up Camp Sulphur. It had existed once, long closed. Nothing there now but fence posts and cracked concrete slabs. No plaque, no gate. Just forgotten land beneath a rusted sky. Every so often, Travis drives that stretch again. And when he sees the soldier standing at attention by mile marker 221, boots dusty, eyes hollow, he doesn't stop. Not anymore, but he always whispers, just loud enough for the wind to carry. I remember you, James.